Almost from the very inception of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, certainly from the time of its second event, UFC 2 in March of 1994, the promotion appended taglines or subtitles to its events. And it did that for all of its numbered pay-per-view offerings all the way up until UFC 125 on New Year's 2011, which was subtitled Resolution. Some of those names stick in your mind. Bitter Rivals, Stacked, Motor City Badness. On April 18th, 2009, UFC 97 took place and featured a headliner of Anderson Silva versus Thales Leites. It was a fairly unremarkable title defense. It was definitely part of Silva's wilderness years where perhaps he was getting bored with his level of competition and was comporting himself in an increasingly bizarre manner within the cage. The important part of that reference is that that one was titled UFC 97 Redemption. And what does that have to do with the card that we're about to talk about right now? Well, only that if the UFC had not abandoned that practice of giving its events taglines over 11 years ago, I think we would have to steal Redemption for UFC 280 that we're about to talk about. The 14 fight card that we're about to discuss is one of the UFC's most loaded of the year, but notably its main event and co-main event feature two of the top fighters in the sport today that are most maligned right now, fairly or unfairly, in headliner Charles de Bronx Oliveira and Aljamain Sterling, who defends the bantamweight title in the co-main event. De Bronx, he is the UFC's all-time leader in submissions. He is the UFC's all-time leader in finishes. He is tied for the all-time lead in post-fight bonuses with Donald Cerrone. However, he is also the UFC's all-time leader in weight misses, along with John Lineker. And even though it had been many, many years since he had any such screw-up, in his most recent fight, he, of course, missed the title limit and lost his lightweight title on the scale. And how interesting how quickly kind of the entire space turned on him. It's almost like a multiple time felon, to bring things back to Keith's day job, where they do a couple stretches in prison in their early 20s. They live as a productive citizen for X number of years. They make one screw up, and a certain segment of the population will be like, well, there he goes again. We knew it all along. He never really turned over a new leaf. And then you look at Sterling. The guy got such a bad rap for winning, the bantamweight title by disqualification over Petr Yan, that even after he beat him fair and square in the rematch, there's, again, a certain segment of the population that thinks Sterling is a coward or a quitter, and that Yan, who's fighting in the feature fight at UFC 280, is the real champ or should be the real champ. It's just an interesting thought as we come into this card that, we're going to talk about it in a second, is loaded from top to bottom. I'm sort of starting to ramble at this point. Perhaps I should introduce the gentleman that, if you're watching this on video, is waiting very patiently for me to get to the damn point. This is, of course, the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 280, Oliveira versus Mokaev. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as always, waiting for me to stop blowing hot air at his screen, is Keith Schillen, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how are you doing today?
Dude, I'm doing great, man. Dude, we're talking about UFC 280. Listen, we do all these fight night cards and all these, and obviously we're as hardcore as they come, and that's why we do them. These are the ones I get really excited about. This is as good of a card ever. And you talked about redemption. I think that's a good statement. I think you go across, the top guys. You talked about the main event, Charles Oliveira. Yeah, he's technically not the champion. Well, he's coming in with a chip on his shoulder. And it's funny, you talked about people hating on him. I disagree. I don't know if anybody's hating on him after this one. Most people gave him credit. the scale was off. Like, hey, that guy was being a dick. Like, why didn't he just give him like, oh, you had to find that one. You talk about police officer, like the guy who gives that speeding ticket in the 5 miles and over, like that guy.
That's the regulator we had at the weigh-in that day.
Yeah. The one that when you get the ticket, you drive away and you go, I'm sure that guy got picked on in high school. That's why he's doing that,
Or the small town where it's like, I bet 80% of this like little town's like yearly budget comes from pulling people over that are coming through from out of state.
Then you have, as you mentioned, Aljamain Sterling. Yeah, I think that was a narrative last fight. And even if you don't think he should have beat Petrosyan in the rematch,
mm-hmm.
you can't deny that it was an extremely close fight that could have went either way. That he at least showed that maybe he's the best guy in the division. Maybe he's the best guy in the world. I think he is the best guy in the world. I think most people view him as a champion. But how about the guy he's going against? You talk about redemption. How about TJ Dillashaw? I mean, this guy was the villain, suspended for what was like 2 years. Mm-hmm. He went from going to be possibly double champ to get knocked out in admitting that he did use performance enhancing drugs. People started questioning his whole career. Well, it won't be a question if he wins on Saturday. He'll be one of the greatest fighters of all time. I mean, he already is one of the greatest fighters of all time, but he becomes a 3-time champion. I mean, throw him in the top 10, throw him in the top 15 all time. And then, there's this guy named Islam Mokaev who's lost one fight in his career and has looked extremely dominant every second he fights.
Yeah, and you make a good point about Dillashaw, and we'll talk a little bit more about it when we get to that fight, but certainly, again, fairly or unfairly, one of the most reviled top fighters of all time. And you and I are both on record as saying that we think Jon Jones is the greatest fighter ever that we've seen up to this point in mixed martial arts. And I say that in full knowledge of, his multiple performance-enhancing drug.
He's our Barry Bonds.
Yeah. You put him in the hall, you put a plaque on that explains this is what he did and this is also what he did, and let people make the decision for themselves. Dillashaw absolutely belongs in that same discussion.
Absolutely.
Whether you think his PED failure was an Anderson Silva thing where, it doesn't make me think he was probably doing it the whole time. Maybe he's just trying to stay competitive as he gets older. Or you think it's a Jon Jones thing where I bet this dude was dirty the whole time. The in-cage accomplishments, the loss to Cejudo hurt him more than the PED failure. If he beats Cejudo and gets stripped afterwards, we talk about him like Jon Jones. Well, yeah, still he's the greatest fighter we've ever seen. Just, he's
like an A-Rod. He's the A-Rod. He's not the Barry Bonds, but he's the A-Rod. We have to figure out who the Sammy Seltzer, Mark McGuire is next.
Anderson Silva is the Roger Clemens.
Yeah,
good just killing everybody. And when he starts to push forward, he's like, okay, I need the juice now.
Yeah, good call. Yeah.
I figured a Red Sox, Like the Yankees Bonds is the one that cheated. Red Sox Bonds was Clemens was squeaky clean.
Yeah, he was squeaky clean.
Yes.
Well, it was when he went to Toronto. He started in Toronto, and those damn Canadians.
Can't trust Canadians.
Right now someone's saying, dude, this is gonna be like a 3-hour show, and they're talking about baseball and steroids, and come on.
Oh, dude, watch me go comatose as my fantasy basketball team auto drafts over in the corner of my screen here while we do this.
Oh, sorry.
No, they forced it on me. I ranked my players. And I'm just watching it go. We could go for a good while talking about just how good this card is top to bottom. When you and I talk about whether we're talking about a fight night or we're talking about one of the UFC's big tentpole numbered events, the real nuance in what separates the bad ones from the good ones from the great ones is, what's the filler? Because we've had pay-per-view cards where the undercard is no better than the fight night card. It's full of people coming off losses. It's full of people who are 2 fights in from the Contender Series. This is not one of those cards. The order may shuffle between now and Saturday, but as of right now, Karol Rosa is in the curtain jerker. She is a top 10 fighter.
Yeah.
Karol Rosa is a top 10 fighter, and she is going to be fighting as well. This is Abu Dhabi, so it's not going to be like being at T-Mobile, and she's fighting in front of like 300 people. But yeah, she's the first fight of the night. She's a top 10 fighter. Yeah. She is one fight removed from the Sarah McMahon fight that was probably a title eliminator. If she won. Yeah,
and we have if we go, not counting the 2 fights we already talked about, the main and co-main event, we have a former champion in the 3rd fight from the top going against one of the biggest names in the sport, one of the most marketable fighters in the sport, and Sean O'Malley. Go further down the line, say what you want, but you have like Kayla Chikagian's fought for a title. Volkan Oezdemir has fought for a title. They're both, on the undercard. We have a guy like Belal Muhammad, whose last fight was a main event of a fight night. We have Matus Gamero, whose last fight was a main event of a fight night. Dariush, I'm not sure if Dariush's last fight was, but he's at least that level. I mean, we have top 5 ranked guys up and down the board. We have undefeated prospects. This card is, it is as loaded as I can remember.
14 fights. Like, obviously the top 3 fights that involve at least a former champion go without saying, but even of the other 11, probably 5 or 6 of them could headline a fight night and nobody would say a word.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, and because this one is in, it's what they called Fight Island, Yas Island, Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates, pretty stacked with Russian and former Soviet Republic fighters, a lot of them whom are kind of, had rough sledding getting fights in the first year or 2 of COVID. So it's a lot of small redemptions in the sense of, hey, you're back. Let's see what you still got. Kind of the Abubakar, Nurmagomedovs, Zubaira Tukhugovs, although that's not COVID's fault, that's his fault, but we'll get to it. A lot of redemption on the table on this one, and just one of the most ludicrously loaded cards of the year. This is our payoff for every time, and your payoff, if you're listening to this, for every time you've heard Keith and me say, it's just another fight night. I give it a C+, I give it a B-. It's okay. This is not okay. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying this is not okay. This is stellar.
I give it an A+. A+.
Oh, dude, A+. On paper, card of the year. On paper, short list of the UFC's most loaded cards ever.
Yeah, the co-main event could headline any pay-per-view. Say that fight falls out this week.
We're okay.
That's still a pretty damn awesome pay-per-view. Even if we lose the co-main event.
If we lose the main event, it's not bad.
I was leading up to that, Ben.
Oh, sorry. Stealing your thunder.
Yeah, if one of the main eventers fall out, we have Alex Volkanovski filling in. But say that doesn't even happen. Say, Mokaev
one of them
misses weight and Charles Oliveira gets eaten by his lion. We still have a good pay-per-view if the main event falls out. I don't know if I give it an A still, but I'd give it a solid B pay-per-view.
Yeah. And ultimately, that's the reason the UFC has started, whenever they can, double stacking these with 2 title fights apiece. So they have a little insulation from that. But this card is beyond insulated. Yeah. It's like bubble wrapped. This card is safe. It's going to be an A or A+ no matter what happens. Even if, Oliveira passes out on the scale, falls on Volkanovski and knocks him out. And yeah. Don't let him stand too close. I'm excited. You want to go ahead and dig into this card?
Yeah, let's do it.
As I alluded a moment ago, the first fight out of the gate at UFC 280, at least as the card is currently scheduled as of the beginning of fight week, is a bantamweight matchup between Karol Rosa and Lina Lansberg. Rosa, the 27-year-old Brazilian, is 15-4 overall. She's 4-1 in the UFC. She won her first 4 fights after joining the promotion before running into Sarah McMahon at UFC on ESPN Blades versus Dawkins back in March. She dropped a unanimous decision there. She'll be looking to get back on track against the veteran Lansberg. The 40-year-old Swede goes by Elbow Queen. I am pretty sure that she went by Elbow Princess 10 years ago. I'm happy to hear that she assumed the throne. Yeah, I am going to admit that I am sadly ignorant of the royal lines of succession in Swedish elbow royalty. So my condolences to the royal family. Hopefully she was seen off with as much love and pomp and circumstance as Queen Elizabeth II. But yeah, the queen is dead. Long live the queen.
Yeah, she's in the 40s now. Like if Lina Lansberg's still fighting 10 years ago, like is there a like a grandmother queen?
Like the Empress Dowager of elbows? I don't know. That's
Like
oh man. It's always the 14 fight cards where we start messing around right from the beginning. It's like 3 hours from now, we're going to be like, oh, dude.
yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, God forbid. Oh, man, I'm really going to talk about this Charles Oliveira Islam Makhachev fight. Oh.
Whew. The 40-year-old Swede, 10-6 overall, 4-5 in the UFC, was brought in as a featherweight title challenger for Chris Cyborg, the only one of that early run of Cyborg challengers that didn't come straight from Invicta. She is on a 2-fight losing streak. The 2-fight losing streak dates back nearly 3 years at this point. She lost to McMahon back in January of 2020, took 2 years off, came back this April, and lost a unanimous decision to Pani Kianzad at UFC on ESPN, Luque versus Magomed. As might be expected of a 40-year-old woman on a 2-fight losing streak, she is a substantial underdog here. Rosa minus 260 as the favorite, Lansberg around plus 200 at most outlets right now. Keith, this is the opening fight of the night.
Yeah.
It is a bit of an indictment of the women's bantamweight division for all the good things I said about the card.
Yeah.
To go from, and again, Karol Rosa's case, fighting Sarah McMahon this year, where if she had won, it would have been 5 straight wins to open her UFC run. She'd have a good case for challenging the winner of Nunes versus Pena 3, if we get that, or just being the next bantamweight title challenger. To go from that to opening up a card against a 40-year-old woman who is probably going to lose her job if she loses, that says something about the depth of this division, really. More, I think, as much as anything else. There just isn't as much of a gap between the top of the top 10 and like the bottom of the top 15 as there are in deeper divisions. I mean, who you got winning this? And I think we know kind of what Lansberg is in general at this point. How much upside do you still see in Karol Rosa?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, good point. Like Lansberg, I don't expect her to have much improvement coming in at 40 years old. Like, I don't think she's like the female George Foreman where suddenly she's going to make a run to the title. She's a minus athlete. She marches forward. She's kind of slow. She does throw hard strikes, but they kind of usually single strikes. She throws a lot of naked leg kicks, doesn't really set anything up, but she really strikes just to close the distance. Every one of her fights are all the same. She wants to get in the close quarters. She wants a dirty box. She has a nickname, the elbow, because she's going to land at least one good hard elbow, cut open her opponent, something like that. She will drop down for a takedown, but she's not a strong wrestler herself. She's been taken down 7 out of her 9 UFC fights. She struggles to get back to her feet, and she has no submission win. So really, her only path to victory is really boring Lina Lansberg, just boring fight. Now, Rosa, she's only 27, so this is like massive gap in age between these two. 13-year difference. She's showed a lot of improvement since she first joined the UFC. Like, she wasn't something to get excited about. Now you mentioned she's a ranked fighter. She's big for the weight class. She's not a great athlete, though. She's a little flat-footed. She stands up a little too tall, but she has good volume. She's got pretty good accuracy. She actually fights a lot like Alexa Grasso, who we just saw, where she throws everything straight down the pipe, basic 1-2s, nothing spectacular. Good jab, nice follow-up, powerful too. I like her calf kicks. I mean, she beat up Vanessa Mello, Jocelyn Edwards, Betchkaya. Was a lot of calf kicks in those fights. Similar to Lansberg, she wants to get in the clinch. We saw her against Betchkaya. She gets that plum clinch. She can be mean in there. Being that she's getting a little older, she might get a little stronger too, so it could be even better. She will look for takedowns, but she's clearly like those BJJ type wrestlers where she'll get the fight to the ground, but she's not going to like blast W. Good ground control, busy ground and pound. She couldn't stop takedowns from Sarah McMahon, but that is Sarah McMahon. That's Lina Lansberg wants to wrestle, but she's not Sarah McMahon, and she really struggled to get up from the bottom. So as far as prediction goes, Lansberg, she's going to want to get in that clinch game. I expect these two battling a lot in the clinch, but Rosa's bigger. She's stronger. She's younger. I think it might actually look a lot like the last fight for Lansberg against Pani Kianzad, where she was getting to the clinch, but she was losing the clinch positions, even though she was initiating. So give me Karol Rosa by decision.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the last Kianzad fight because, yeah, like Lansberg's I wouldn't say her only route to victory, but what she instinctively wants to do, what she has basically spent her whole career working towards, is just poison against Pani Kianzad, who's a younger person who kind of likes to do the same things. And Kianzad, younger, bigger, a little more versatile. All those things apply to Karol Rosa as well. I think Karol Rosa, if she wants to, can probably keep things at boxing range against Lansberg and just kind of piece Lansberg up as she trudges forward. Lansberg's feet were always kind of slow. They've gotten super like molasses, like peanut butter out the fridge slow. Or if Lansberg does manage to get the clinch, I think Rosa's going to be able to take her down. If they go to the ground, it's going to be when and where and how Rosa wants, with Rosa probably on top. So I think this is going to be ugly for Lansberg. Lansberg's always been tough. I mean, Cyborg smashed her, and Aspen Ladd, like peak on her way up, Aspen Ladd smashed her. But those were two people that, again, just Cyborg, one of the greatest fighters of all time. Aspen Ladd, another person who was just way bigger, stronger, and just was stylistic poison for what Lansberg likes to do in a fight. Other than that, she's just been sort of game, and she's hung in there, and the results haven't always been lovely to watch. I think this is going to be one of those, only more lopsided and ugly than some of the other ones recently. So give me Rosa by a very one-sided decision. We just got finished talking about this last weekend's main event, which felt like the closest 50-45 fight you ever saw. This is going to be one of the most lopsided 30-27 fights you ever saw, because I bet Rosa doesn't do quite enough to get a 10-8 in any of the 3 rounds, but all of them you're like, oh, that was bad. And that's going to be this fight, the 30-27 fight that feels much more lopsided than the final score indicates. We head now to the men's flyweight division for a matchup between Muhammad Mokaev and Malcolm Gordon. Mokaev, the 22-year-old Russian-born, I don't want to say British raised, but, has lived in England since he was a teen, went to college in England, Russian by way of Great Britain for real.
They need the prospect a little more than Russia does. Like, let's give it to them. You know what I mean? Like,
they need the prospect, but I'm saying it's not just like this thing where they're claiming him because he's lived there for 18 months. He's 22 and he's lived there for like 6 or 7 years. He is 8-0 with 1 no contest overall. He is 2-0 since joining the UFC out of Brave CF. He fought most recently back in July, where he took a unanimous decision over Charles Johnson. Prior to that, he fought in March, choking out Cody Durden in under a minute. He'll look to make it 3 straight against Gordon. The 32-year-old Canadian is 14-5 overall. He is 2-2 since joining the UFC as a former TKO flyweight champ. 2-2 in the UFC. Worth noting that he's 2-1 at flyweight. His debut was against Amir Albazi at bantamweight. Since then, he lost to Sumudarji, then came back with back-to-back wins over Francisco Figueiredo and Denise Bondar. The most recent of those, the Bondar win, was an abbreviated fight, like 90 seconds, where Bondar was TKO'd by an arm injury. That was at UFC Fight Night Hermanson versus Strickland. Mokaev, biggest favorite on the card. He is minus 750. Gordon plus 500 on the comeback. Keith, again, this card order is subject to change, but this fight's got to be on there somewhere. We know it's almost certainly not on the main card. As of right now, it's the second one out of the gate, and it's Muhammad Mokaev, where he isn't Sean O'Malley, at least he isn't yet, but he's one of these young guys that seems to have that same kind of sparkle. He's a dazzling fighter, and he has kind of a very engaging personality where he's like cocky in a fun way.
Yeah.
He can talk trash in like 3 different languages fluently.
Yeah.
All he needs to do is keep winning, and the O'Malley type shine. I mean, obviously the gold standard is the UFC wants the next McGregor.
Yeah.
And in the absence of that, they'll take that O'Malley if they can get it. Mokaev is the kind of fighter who's on that track to maybe prospect turn contender and maybe star. He's a massive, massive favorite against Malcolm Gordon here. my thought is always, it isn't fair. But if you're a 10-1 favorite, there's a certain place in people's minds, not just fans, but like me, myself, where, well, that means that you are supposed to beat him up 5 times as bad as a 2-1 favorite, right? Then the odds, it's not the severity of the beating, it's the likelihood of the beating. But nonetheless, there's that unreasonable expectation. I mean, what does Mokaev need to do here to keep his stock soaring? And do you think he gets it done?
Yeah, he's a really good prospect. That's one of the guys I was talking about when we were talking about rising prospects on this card. There's a few of them on this card, which is really exciting. And he's got a tough test.
3 fighters under the age of 23.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
that's everything you need to know. Malcolm Gordon is a tough test. When Malcolm Gordon first came to UFC, like, I wasn't sure if he was UFC level fighter. I think he's proved to me that he's at least low-level UFC talent, where he's going to be a tough test for a rising prospect. He isn't very technical on his feet, but he is athletic. He's got some quick hands. He's been knocked down and knocked out a couple times past, but that was always worried me. But he's got some good power himself. He can wrestle a little bit. I don't see anything like spectacular wrestling, but he just finds a way to get the fight to the canvas. He's not explosive, but he's just this kind of grinding mindset where he's committed to get it there. He has a submission threat. He has 6 sub wins in his career. He usually wins by outworking his foe and then like finding a sub in an opening, which I really like. But he's got a weak defensive wrestling. Now, Mokaev, I mean, he's one of the best prospects in the division. Like, you know what he is? If our show, you said he's talented and cocky. If our show was a fighter, it'd be Mokaev. Like obviously the talent, like the high talent that I have, and like the cockiness that you have, it'd be like the perfect blend of a fighter.
I've been told that I'm too cocky a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure of the two of us that you're the cocky asshole, and I'm the nice guy, right? So you talk about. I love his personality. It's that borderline when you have these all-time great guys where it's right on that line of extreme confidence with arrogance. The Michael Jordans, the Kobe Bryants, LeBron James, Tiger Woods, Tom Brady's. These guys have that. He has that in him, which I like. Good volume, very technically sound boxing for only a 22-year-old guy. He sets everything up with feints so he can counter. He's quick, very slip and rip style. He just slips out of range, tags up his foes. I like that he tags up with combos. He works the body. He gets in the pocket, and he really can crack, and he really hasn't come into his power yet. He hit Durden with that beautiful, incredible flying knee, shows his athleticism. Very good wrestler. He's completely different than Gordon in that wrestling where he explodes through the hips, fast entries. He was hitting suplexes in all the fights, smothering top control. He has 3 submission wins. As far as prediction, Mokaev's going to murder Gordon. I think he tags him up on the feet. I think he slams him. I think he batters him to the ground and pound, and then I think he catches him in a submission in a transition. I think he's going to, like, where did he buzz him out? I think we're going to buzz him out even more. Give me Mokaev very first round submission.
Yeah, I'm with you on a lot of this. And coming into the UFC, it was almost more that I hoped Mokaev would be great than I expected him to be great. Like, Brave CF is it's an outstanding promotion. It's really just in the last 3 years moved up into the top tier of feeder leagues into the UFC. It stepped up to kind of be alongside LFA and just CFFC and just a few other regional promotions that really send a lot of blue chips to the UFC. And that's,
and to your credit, you've been one of the guys pointing that out a lot. Like you've been pushing that narrative harder than probably anybody. Well, and it's true.
And it's because I knew who Brave CF was, and really it was over 2 years ago at the start of COVID where they're based out of Bahrain, or at least, most of their cards take place there. And all of a sudden this is a regional promotion that can get its fighters to Abu Dhabi on short notice and bypassing American and European just COVID restrictions. And that was all the opportunity they needed to show that they've had some of the best prospects in the sport for who knows how long. But prior to that, it's worth noting, if you're looking at Muhammad Mokaev's record on the Sherdog Fight Finder right now, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you're see his record right underneath us. Tapology has one fewer win for Mokaev than we do. And it's because Tapology actually excluded one of his early career wins because they basically concluded that his opponent threw the fight. Either threw the fight or was so overmatched that it shouldn't count as a professional win. Like, and I've seen the fight, and the guy wilted from he was going to lose to Mokaev either way, but you can definitely argue that he didn't make enough effort to count this as a win. Wherever possible, obviously, the Sherdog Fight Finder, we try to avoid acting as an athletic commission. We are not that. We're just a record-keeping body. And I'm not disagreeing with Tapology's conclusion. I'm just saying, that we have different views of how to address a situation like that.
Well, Sherdog's paying us for this show, so I'm disagreeing with him. just for the record. Just to make up for not plugging in my computer on the last show. Before Mike Fridley finds out and I'm fired.
Just to say that Mokaev, at least on his way to Brave, had pushover competition. They were building him up like a boxer, really. England, great boxing country. They were building him up in proper fashion. But even once he got to Brave, I was like, please let this guy be as good as he thinks he is. And thus far in the UFC, he has been. He dispatched Cody Durden. You see the 58 second guillotine choke, but as Keith points out, it was set up by just a beautiful flying knee, like almost the first significant strike of the fight. Like I don't know if Durden landed anything, and then just bullied Charles Johnson for 3 rounds. I expect that he's going to have his way with Gordon as well. The speed differential is going to be shocking. You mentioned Gordon has good hand speed. Mokaev has blinding hand speed, and his feet are much faster. He's a stout wrestler. Gordon's a good wrestler. Mokaev is a high amplitude, throw people around wrestler, and it transitions so seamlessly into his submission game. He's got that thing where, he actually has more submissions than TKOs on his record. And a lot of it is because, he takes people down emphatically enough that they're out of sorts, wind knocked out of them, a little rung up, and he's already moving to take their back, or he's sliding right into mounts and they're in deep water already. I can definitely see him doing any of those things to Gordon. I'm going to say Gordon makes it to the second round because the Gordon that got blitzed in his first 2 UFC fights, he just looks a lot better than that guy now. Like you said, he's gone from a guy that looked not to be UFC material to a guy that he definitely is, but he's not on Mokaev's level even now, let alone what this guy might be in 4 or 5 years. Give me Muhammad Mokaev by second round submission, but second round TKO on the ground would be equally likely for me. Next up on the UFC 280 undercard, we have a middleweight matchup between Armen Petrosyan and AJ Dobson. Petrosyan, the 31-year-old Armenian by way of Russia, is 7-2 overall. He is 1-1 since joining the UFC out of the 2021 season of Dana White's Contender Series. There, he knocked out Kaloyan Kolev late in the first round to punch his ticket to the UFC. He took a split decision over Gregory Rodriguez in his UFC debut this February. Came back and faced Caio Borralho in July. Borralho, of course, appears higher up this card. And the reason he appears higher up this card is that Borralho won that fight. That was a unanimous decision victory at UFC on ESPN, Dos Anjos versus Fiziev. Petrosyan will look to get back in the W column against Dobson. The 30-year-old American, Cleveland native, I believe, is 6-1 with 1 no contest overall. He is 0-1 since joining the UFC, also out of last year's season of the Contender Series. He debuted in February at UFC 271 against Jacob Malkoun, where he dropped a unanimous decision. Petrosyan, a comfortable favorite here. He is minus 210, Dobson plus 175 on the comeback. I am going to toss this one to you first, Keith, but I was going to give a little trivia note about Armen Petrosyan, and for all the details here, I am giving full credit to Sherdog Fight Finder Administrator Jay Petrie. I also have to thank him for fact-checking me on the opening segment where I said that Charles de Bronx Oliveira is tied for the UFC's all-time lead in weight misses. He fact-checked that for me because that's what he does. Armen Petrosyan.
He fact-checked you like he was telling you to change it already. I was like, damn, he's really good. This hasn't been posted yet. I'm like, damn.
He's tapped into the StreamYard, just like listening. I'm just waiting for me to screw up.
What's that? Remember that TV show where he would say things and this nerdy guy would pop out? It was like, well, actually, like, I don't know if everybody knows what show I'm talking about.
I don't know, but that's hilarious. And I need someone like that. I need like a snarky producer to just keep me in line. There's been a certain amount of publicity on the Sherdog Fight Finder staff this year, which is normally a group of people that very much labors in the shadows. I mean, the Fight Finder staffers that work in certain parts of Brazil and that work in Russia and former Soviet republics, like literally go by aliases just for their own safety, because there's so much crooked money going around. But, we've been in the spotlight a little bit this year. Obviously, the big one was the Askar Mozharov mess a couple months ago where, like Felder and other people from the UFC desk were like DMing Jay to get like the details so that they could give, speak correctly on the broadcast. Armen Petrosyan, interesting cat. Like, obviously, he came to the UFC through the Contender Series last season. I'm not sure whether it was an upset, but I remember thinking of Kolev as kind of the better prospect of the two. And Petrosyan, he's been a somewhat of a pleasant surprise since. Middleweight needs bodies. His record shows at 7-2. There's a fight he had, and I want to say it was just a little over a year ago, right before his Contender Series appearance. Jay Petrie has run the Sherdog Fight Finder for over 2 years. I ran it for a full year before him, and I'm still on staff. Just I was the guy in charge for a year before that. We've seen every.
Well, they had to let you go when you decided to loyalty towards Tapology over the Fight Finder.
Oh, yeah. So I mean, we've seen every possible permutation of a fighter or their management team trying to get losses hidden, like legitimate losses, like saying the fight didn't happen, it wasn't me, it was this other guy with a similar name. Armen Petrosyan's July 2021 win over Alexander Zemlyakov, it is the hardest I have ever seen a fighter's team try to hide a win. Okay. The hardest I've ever seen a winning fighter's team like try to bury it. If you look at it on the Fight Finder, it's a 14-second TKO via body kick and punches.
Okay.
And it is Petrosyan, a blue chip prospect, fighting an absolute can in a Russian promotion called Coliseum MMA. Coliseum is basically, it's a puppy mill of wins for CIS fighters. They'll have weekend cards that have 40, 50, 60, 90 fights on them. Where it just, I mean, you remember like, your county dual meets where they have, 4 mats at the same time going in the gym. It's like that. They got like 4 cages going at the same time, and just ultra low level fighters just it. Like, well, real prospects, like guys that are 7-0, just beating up like 0-1, 0-2, 1-6 guys just to get their records padded and get the attention of the UFC, the Contender Series. Petrosyan went and took a fight like that after he lost his first career fight, and he was so embarrassed by it. Like, his management team wanted to get him back into the win column. They wanted to get back on the UFC's radar. He went and took this fight in Coliseum MMA against, again, an absolute can. And I never use that term in talking about a fighter.
But the guy was, in fairness, the guy was 1-0 with a knockout. No, I'm not trying to like dog. I mean, it's like, did he know he was like? Do you don't know he's a can? He was 1-0 with a 4-minute knockout, and then he got knocked out in 14 seconds.
It looks that way, but his one fight had been like a couple weeks before. He's not a natural middleweight, and he all but like after the fight, he all but asks Petrosyan for an autograph. Like, it looked like when the Dream Team played at the 1992 Olympics, and the dudes from Angola got beat like 115-25, and then asked to get their picture with like Charles Barkley afterwards. It was like that kind of shit. But they were so embarrassed by it, they actually had Coliseum hide the result. Like, they made the video on YouTube unsearchable. Instead of like sending the actual result out in text, they took a screenshot so that you couldn't search by like the names, because it was just a picture of the names. Like, real shady shit. And it's like, dude, you know what? You took a bounce back fight.
You can't get back Jay Petri. He was out in Russia in disguise.
You cannot get past Jay Petri. This shit probably would have got past me. Like, I'm a fairly conscientious dude, but I'm only human. Jay Petri is a machine. Also, I don't blame the player. I blame the game. Like, why does Armen Petrosyan have to feel bad about taking a bounce back fight? Like, dude, you were a young prospect. You started your career 4-0. You lost your first career fight. Take a bounce back fight. Fight a lame fighter. Don't hide it. Just steer into it, dude. At any rate, he's 7-2.
Yeah.
He's going to try and go 8-2. Has Dobson got anything for him?
If he is 8-2, we don't know it. You know? Maybe he's like 15-2.
I'm pretty sure this is his real record now, I think. I hope. But yeah, man, talk to me about this fight. Petrosyan, he's got one really good win since he's been in the UFC, like at the prospect level, and one kind of excusable loss, again, at the high level prospect level. Does he break through?
Yeah, maybe AJ Dobson should bring that old opponent to the cage with him, and maybe that'll mess with Armen.
Oh, bring him with like a mask over another mask.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Justin McCauley.
Yeah, Justin McCauley, where you got like the beekeeper mask over like the weird like drama mask that was 3 sizes too small. That's what, oh my goodness, I love this.
In Bellator. Petrosyan he's an amazing striker. He really is. Great footwork, very elusive. He hits really hard. Though I've said it before, but like even though he moves well, he does circle to his opponent's power, which is a little surprising. I said that before, but quick hands, his straight shots down the pipe are great. Crushing power. All his wins are by knockout. Some of his wins, I mean, he got some great leg kicks, great body kick. One of the quickest high kicks you'll see in the game. Gets inside the plum clinch, batters in there. But he's a weak wrestler. I mean, he's been taken down 9 times in just 3 UFC fights. And to his credit, to his defense, like he gets back up, so that's good. And he has a cardio to go hard all 15 minutes. Like even in a fight where he's losing, he's still, pressing hard, trying to get the knockout. AJ Dobson, he's a wrestle boxer. He's aggressive on the feet. I'd say he has plus power, but he can be really wild. I said it before, he reminds me like a Chuck Liddell. Like he throws this overhand right, really wild. He has been rocked because of his aggressive style in the past. He doesn't like pressure. You go back to that Jacob Makhmud fight. He looked like he mentally broke in his fight. Now, again, he took that fight. It was really wicked short notice against a guy in Jacob Makhmud who just looked great this past week. At least I thought he looked great. He's very physically strong. If he gets in the plum clinch, he can win there. He has a wrestling background, so he will go for takedowns. Good ground and pound. He has a few subs on his record. This comes down to I really want to pick AJ Dobson because the avenue for victory is there. I mean, and it's not even just an avenue for victory. It's like an obvious one. If he promised me that he would wrestle, I would pick him. I think this pick is going to frustrate me if I don't pick him and he wrestles. Like it's going to be bothering me. I'm going to be like, why didn't you do it? But Petrosyan does work back to his feet, and on the feet, this is a mismatch. I think Petrosyan catches Dobson with a big shot. I think he knocks him out. I'm going to say he does it right in the first round. Petrosyan by first round KO.
Yeah, I like a lot of what you laid out there, and I mean, I can't wait to be on the recap with you if you have to feel all bad about not picking the wrestler. I like what
I'll get a Bo Nickel reference in there.
Okay, that's important because I'm about to make a reference that won't be surprising because I said this the last time we broke down a Petrosyan fight. You pointed out that he circles the quote unquote wrong way, and like the most famous circle the wrong way fighter in MMA history, Mirko Cro Cop, he does it for the same reason. It makes it quicker for his kicks to get there. Just like Cro Cop, he circled into his opponent's power because it allowed him to corral those people into his kicks. And especially when he was working in a square ring, he was adept at walking people into corners with it. And that was going to work for as long as he had the faster reflexes. It caught up to him just as he began to age and started fighting in an octagon. It's been working for Petrosyan so far. Yeah, dude, his kicks are terrifying. And you mentioned Chuck Liddell. Imagine if we'd gotten Liddell versus Cro Cop at 220. Just what a fight that would have been. Oh,
Hey, we got Liddell and really young Alistair over him.
Yeah, we sure did. It was a hell of a fight. Yeah, good stuff. Anyway, I'm with you here. Dobson has avenues to victory. The Malkoun fight, even though Jacob Malkoun and Armen Petrosyan are as different as two fighters could get in terms of their physique, in terms of their approach, in terms of kind of like their tactical approach and just kind of their mental approach, it was concerning because Dobson had a pretty good first round there. Like, he definitely won the first round, and then Malkoun just like put him through a box grater in the second, and he won the third as well. I have the feeling that Petrosyan is gonna catch Dobson on the feet with a lot of stuff, and Dobson will probably try to take this fight to the ground, but not until a little too late. He's shown too much willingness to kind of test his luck on the feet, regardless of who's across from him. And Petrosyan is not the guy to do that against. Petrosyan's ceiling at 185, at least as his skill set is currently constituted, is going to come when he runs into people who can take him down and are willing to do it right off the bat. When he runs into more Caio Borralho types, AJ Dobson maybe could do that. I don't think we're going to find out, though. I think Petrosyan knocks him out as well. Give me Armen Petrosyan by first round knockout here. Next up, in the welterweight division, is a matchup which will test the Sherdog website's ability to fit characters into a single line. It is Abubakar Nurmagomedov versus Gadzhi Omargadzhiev. Nurmagomedov, the 32-year-old Dagestani, is 16-3-1 overall. He's 1-1 since joining the UFC as a veteran of World Series of Fighting, the first season of PFL, and then having joined the UFC back in 2019. He lost his UFC debut. That was all the way back in November of 2019. He got triangled by David Zavada, of all people. Went away for almost 2 years. Fought last March. Took a unanimous decision over Jared Gooden. He is back again after another 1.5 year layoff to take on Omargadzhiev. Omargadzhiev, 29-year-old Russian, is 13-1 overall. He is 0-1 in the UFC. He made it undefeated all the way up through the Contender Series last October. Lost to Caio Borralho at UFC on ESPN Luque versus Makhmud 2 back in April. You may remember it was a weird fight. Borralho was beating him badly for most of 3 rounds. There was an eye poke and there was a shot to the head of a downed fighter in Omargadzhiev. Omargadzhiev, after frankly some deliberation, decided he wasn't able to go on. It went to a technical decision, and even with the point deduction to Borralho won easily 29-27, no controversy, at least on the scores. So he'll be looking to get back in the win column. He is not favored to do so, but the odds are fairly close. Nurmagomedov is -180, Omargadzhiev +150 on the comeback. Keith, gonna toss this one to you first, but I'll say Abubakar Nurmagomedov, I expected him to have done more than this fight. Well, for one thing, I expected him to have fought more than twice in 4 years, since almost making the PFL finals. PFL that first season, he got a draw in his semi against Bojan Veliskovich. Just, Veliskovich ended up advancing because of their weird tiebreaker rule for their 2-round playoff fights.
God, it's so bad.
It really was. I mean, don't want to get
imagine, you have a group of people together, and that's the best thing you come up with. Really? Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's just last night the Astros swept the Mariners with the longest playoff game in baseball history. Walk-off home run, or not a walk-off home run, but 1-0 on a 1-run homer in the 18th inning. That first PFL season would have been well, if we get to 15 innings, we just do a coin flip and everybody, we just agree on that. Like, just what a disappointment.
Who scored first? Who scored in the first?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's more like it.
Who got the first hit of the game?
Yeah.
Wait, yeah, the first batter did. Whoa, hey, sucks for you guys.
What did we do the whole rest of this for?
Yeah.
It's 170 is as crowded as a division gets. Do you see, contender upside in either of these guys, and who do you think wins?
Yeah, I don't. I really don't.
One quick note before I let you go. Omargadzhiev's loss to Borralho was at 185. Omargadzhiev has dropped to 170 since then.
Which is concerning because he wasn't small from one. Like, he didn't lose by Bio's huge, so that might make you get out of the division because the guy looks like a heavyweight. But Nurmagomedov, he's a southpaw. He hits really hard. He kept trying to land that naked uppercut against Vulicevic. And again, like this, like you mentioned, there's only two or three fights you judge him off of that. The Jared Gooden fight, like this, there's not much you can get recently.
And the weird Zavada just, getting triangled in 2 minutes by.
I know. Yeah. What a terrible loss that was too. I actually forgot about it. Yeah, he's a good wrestler. He will constantly shoot and reshoot, which I do like. But he'll shoot without a setup, and you'd be surprised. Like, I've seen him get taken down by lower level guys. I mean, he was taken down. I think Vulicevic took him down once in the PFL. He does has a good get up game. He does have a submission loss, which I don't like. He kind of gassed out against Vulicevic. He was starting to gas out against Jared Gordon. Like, I'll say this about Nurmagomedov: if his last name was Jones or Smith, like, I don't think he'd have anywhere near the hype he has. But that last name in Nurmagomedov brings with it, a lot more hype. Now,
if his name was Abubakar Jones, that'd be a hell of a thing. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Gadzhi, I'm going to butcher his name. I'm just going to call him Gadzhi. On the feet, he's got a really slip and rip style. He hits hard. I'll give him that. But he throws a lot of looping punches, and he can always overswing. He was doing it against Borralho. He was overswinging. And he's gotten hurt in the past. He got hurt in his last fight, which I don't like. He was dropped by Borralho. But he's a good wrestler. But he struggled to get off his back in his last fight. But I'm going to give him a pass because Borralho is really good grappler. He does have Gadzhi has 3 submission wins. He likes heel hooks and ankle locks, which I don't like, but he's hit him in the past, so that's something to watch. I'm not very high on either guy. I think the winner of this is probably just a lower UFC talent. I'm going to go with an upset. I'm going to go with Gadzhi. I think he hits harder. I think he'll be tough to take down. I got to take an underdog sometimes, so give me Gadzhi. I'll take him by split decision.
Yeah, I get what you're putting down there. It's shocking how little, like, relevant tape there is on Nurmagomedov for somebody whose name has been in our ears for years now. I mean, even before PFL, rebranded and launched in 2018, Nurmagomedov had opened up his World Series of Fighting run. I think he went 4-0 or 5-0 in World Series of Fighting, and would almost certainly have fought for the regular lineal belt if they'd stayed World Series of Fighting for another year. I mean, he would have been fighting, well, hell, he would have been fighting like John Fitch or David Branch, for one of those 2 belts if he'd stuck around. But, the weird PFL season and then him just disappearing for large stretches. I mean, this is the original guy that they took the name and they're like, oh yeah, he's Khabib's brother. And there's like, well, no, it's really his cousin. Well, no, it's really his like second cousin, once removed. And so he was the first. Like, this is, kind of the Nurmagomedovs are doing what the Gracies were doing in the 90s. He was the original Victor Gracie of the Nurmagomedovs.
How do they still get that reference?
Come on, guys. If you know you some Victor Gracie, get in the comment section.
Is there like a Russian Hulk Hogan out there just calling everybody brother? Is that like, does that happen? Was he brother? Oh, he's Khabib's brother?
Yeah.
Is it like,
that's amazing.
Did Hulk Hogan ever go against the Russians? Oh,
of course.
Nikita Volkov. What was his name? No,
Nikolai Volkov.
Yeah,
Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik.
yeah.
Oh,
I was like
man.
his original enemies. Yeah, maybe Nikolai Volkov's walking around calling people brother, trying to get popular. He's trying to get popular like Hogan.
Yes.
God rest his soul.
God.
I'm just assuming he's dead. I don't know if he is. I'm just
Volkov?
assuming.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's got to be.
The Iron Sheik's still alive. His Twitter
Really?
is a hilarious follow. Yeah. He just like does like these just profanity laden all caps things, just telling different people and things to go fuck themselves. It's pretty funny. You should follow the Iron Sheik.
You should
on
get him
Twitter.
on here as a special guest sometime.
Dude, that'd be amazing.
Do
Hey,
predictions
dude,
with the Iron Sheik.
he had an actual like amateur wrestling
I
background.
know he
Like,
was.
yeah.
He was a badass. Yeah.
In like 1968. Anyway, Nurmagomedov has kind of fizzled. He's turned into, and I mean, I hate to lump him in, but he looks like just another Dagestani grinder now. He looks like what you get when you get that basic skill set without the Khabib or Islam Makhachev level athleticism. And it's hard to tell because, again, he's fought like 3 times in the past 4 years. I mean, it's almost exactly 4 years since the draw with Veliskovich. And since then, he's had a pretty good win over Jared Gooden, a completely embarrassing loss to David Zavada, and a couple of long layoffs. And I don't expect him to have gotten better over that time. You know, he's gone from 28 to 32. Like, I'm picking him, and I'm basically talking myself out of picking him as I pick him. You know, his gas tank is starting to betray him. He was never a super fast twitch guy to start with. I think what has me leaning towards him is that Omargadzhiev is dropping down from 185 to 170. And as you mentioned, it's not like his problem at 185 was that he was outsized. He just ran into a better fighter. And that was his first career loss. And this feels almost like a panic button move, you know, for a 13-1 fighter. So give me Nurmagomedov to win a grindy decision here, saying, you know, he probably will get some takedowns, or we'll just have some like of those long nullifying sequences against the fence where he's kind of working for a takedown. He's got Omargadzhiev on one knee. He's trying to get that leg right in. You know the sequence I'm talking about if you're watching this. And because Omargadzhiev is dropping from 185 to 170, all of a sudden neither of them has enough cardio to really put a stamp on things in the third round, and he goes ahead and takes it. So give me Nurmagomedov by decision here, but I have no real confidence in that. No. How could you have confidence in Abubakar Nurmagomedov right now? So if Keith's right, then yeah, he picked the right underdog horse here.
No, side note, I was reading about the Iron Sheik. While I knew he had a amateur wrestling background. I didn't realize how elite it was. He was an AAU champion, and he was the 1972 U.S. Olympic assistant wrestling coach. Yep. Like, holy shit, Iron Sheik, man! I didn't realize how much of a badass he was.
And I mean, that would have been like fairly recently after Iran really popped up as an international wrestling power, and I'm sure the U.S. was like, we got to get one of them Iranian dudes to help us coach, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've talked baseball, football, basketball, professional wrestling, hockey's coming up. Stay tuned.
Life goals for me. The Iron Sheik had a gut with a 6-pack on it. Like, that's what I want, dude.
There you go.
He looked like an action figure as a human being. You know, like how like He-Man figures would have like those kind of like carved in like abs. He had that like on a gut. I want that.
We're pissing off so many people with all this.
Hey, timestamps are your friends, folks. Next up on the UFC 280 undercard, we have a last-minute thrown-together matchup between Magomed Mustafaev and short notice opponent Yamato Nishikawa. Mustafaev, the 34-year-old Russian, is 14-3 overall. He is 3-2 in the UFC. Talk about some highs and lows. He is coming off a loss in his last fight. It was a split decision to Brad Riddell at UFC Fight Night Felder versus Hooker. If you're going, wait, what? That's because UFC Fight Night Felder versus Hooker was 2.5 years ago. Yeah. Prior to that, he had fought way back in April of 2019, where he knocked out Rafael Fiziev in about 90 seconds. That loss has aged decently, or that win has aged decently. But yeah, this is him in the cage for the first time in almost 3 years, like easily 2.5 years. He had been scheduled to fight Jamie Malarkey. Malarkey dropped out within like the last, I think, 10 days or so. And in steps Yamato Nishikawa, who I believe will be the youngest person in the UFC when he steps into that cage.
Will he really, though, B?
Hey.
Yeah. Okay.
He's from Japan. I strongly suspect he's exactly as old as he says he is.
Yeah, he's 19. He's got 24 fights.
I'm gonna get to that in a sec.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to steal your mojo.
Yeah, no, the 19-year-old from Sapporo, Japan, 21-3-6 overall.
Oh yeah.
And
sorry.
if you know anything about Japanese MMA, it will not surprise you when you hear that number 6 for me to say, yeah, he came from Shudo.
Yeah, I got to count the 6 draws.
Yeah, he 21-3-6. He comes in on a 14-fight win streak, primarily in Shudo, a couple of one-off fights like in VTJ, but 14-fight win streak. Here's the problem. He fought on September 19th, so basically 4 weeks before UFC 280 at welterweight. He's on a 14-fight win streak. He has bounced back and forth between 155, 170, and a couple of catchweights in between throughout there. But this is his shot on the biggest stage. He steps in on short notice and, down a weight class from where he fought just 4 weeks ago. Unsurprisingly, he is one of the biggest underdogs on the card. Mustafaev, despite not having fought in 30 months, is minus 550. Nishikawa plus 425. I mean, Keith, this is a clash of fighters that it's hard to believe in.
Yeah.
Coming right out of his loss to Brad Riddell, I was high on Magomed Mustafaev. Like, why wouldn't you be? He lost to Kevin Lee, and losing to Kevin Lee in 2016, not a thing to be ashamed of. Kevin Lee was a top 10 fighter and came, within a breath of a title shot. The win over Rafael Fiziev has aged incredibly well. The loss to Brad Riddell was razor close and has aged well. I mean, he was a top 10 fighter on talent at that time, or looked like it, but
sure,
just has had a couple of massive layoffs. Between the Lee and Fiziev fights, he was off for like 2.5 years. Since the Riddell fight, he's been off for 2.5 years. He's aged from a young prospect into like a 34-year-old who's fought twice in the last 5 years.
Yeah, he's fought once in the last 3.5 years.
Yeah, once in the last 3.5 years, twice in more than 5. He's now 34.
His opponents fight every single weekend, apparently.
Well, here, let's go. Magomed Mustafaev fought last on February of 2020. Let's see here. Nishikawa is 10-0 since the last time Mustafaev fought.
There you go.
10 times.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Like that hearing that stat makes like Neil Magny reach for his oxygen tank.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. Nishikawa, it is a gaudy looking win streak, but there's a reason that he wasn't on the UFC's radar. There's a reason that he wasn't on like even the Contender Series radar. He's 19 years old. He's fighting a ton of fights, but even winning, like, dude, if you win 14 fights in a row in Shudo and you don't have a title, that says something. Like you are card filler. Like he's never really moved up to the top level of contenders. He's bounced back and forth between weight classes. They've just kept him really, really busy. I mean, you'll give better X's and O's than me, but he looks to me like a basic slugger. He is short and squat. He's ridiculously short and squat at 170. He'll be one of the shortest lightweights in the UFC. I mean, Michel Tractor Pereira is probably shorter than him. I think Michael Chandler is probably shorter than him, but that's about it. I mean, he's just kind of a basic slugger. I don't know what Mustafaev is going to look like. He's a guy that also bounced back and forth between 170 and 155, despite being kind of short and squat. There's no reason to believe he's the same fighter he was when he lost a razor-close decision to a top 10, top 15 fighter in Brad Riddell. There's no reason to believe that. But if he's even a ghost of that, I think he dusts Nishikawa. Like, Nishikawa is probably not UFC material even on a full camp. But here, like, a quick turnaround, a quick weight cut, even if the UFC comes back and says, actually, we're just going to do this at 170, I don't believe in him here. At the very least, Mustafaev should be able to wrestle him and just take him down and control him there, and stay out off the gunnery range of his punches. Give me Mustafaev, but when I say there's no confidence here, it's because this guy is essentially an unknown right now. Whereas at least I've got to see a lot of Nishikawa fights recently.
Yeah. So Mustafaev, I mean, you mentioned it. It's hard to have confidence in a guy who's now 34 and he hasn't fought. And you mentioned one time in 3.5 years. So everything I'm basing his skills off of is what we saw 3.5 years ago. Like, they could all be completely diminished. That's my big warning. What we last seen of him was a good fighter. He's a guy who could fight out of both stances. He throws really hard hooks. He hits hard. He kind of throw a little too many power shots, and he can overthrow his shots. But he's got some good hard body kicks. Sometimes naked though. He'd been rocked in a lot of fights. I mean, he was dropped by Brad Riddell, which I don't like. But he hit that beautiful spinning back fist against Fiziev. He can throw let me back up. Sorry. He's a really good wrestler. Like that, I expect to still be there. He's very physically strong. He's good at winning scrambles. He chain wrestles really well. And when he gets you down, he stays glued to you. He has 4 submission wins. Some of his submissions are he likes ankle locks. Now, Nishikawa, besides having all these fights at 19, if you go back, this is the thing that stood out to me, besides having, 30 plus fights at 19 years old. If you go to the Fight Finder, it would have been like he had his debut when he was 13. That's why I really question his age. But I mean, it's a different culture, so maybe that's true. Southpaw, very unorthodox. Did you say something?
Japan's answer to Joe Stevenson, where he had a ridiculous number of fights young, just because he started so young. But even that was not like this. Yeah, he was fighting when he was 16. Yeah, 13.
Do you have armpit hair? I don't know. Maybe so you might not have. I don't know. It's just you probably should have to have armpit hair before you fight him. He's a southpaw. He's very unorthodox style. He's very hittable. He pulls his head straight back. He gets tagged up a lot. He does throw hard. I'll give him that. A lot of kicks, but you call him a slugger. I think he's a grappler. He wants to grapple bad. He's a weak defensive wrestler, but he wants to get down. He Imanari rolls. If he gets a limb, he stays glued to you. If he gets you to the ground, pretty hard ground and pound. He has 4 submission wins. His last fight I saw was really impressive submission. But the issue with Nishikawa is you talked about being on the radar at the UFC. The most notable thing he did was he called out Shinya Aoki while Shinya Aoki was commentating, and Shinya Aoki walked in the cage and punched him in the face. I don't know if you saw that. That was great. Just got assaulted.
I must have cut it off before then.
Yeah, who just called out Dominic Cruz? Who was it? Jonathan Martinez. Jonathan Martinez called out Dominic Cruz and Dominic Cruz just walks in there and just punches him right in the face. Shinya Aoki is a G. Shinya Aoki is a Japanese, Nate Diaz.
And at least a former cop. So hey, a favorite of the Sheldon Duffy show. Yeah,
there you go. I'm with you. I think Mustafaev wins. I think he can hurt Nishikawa on the feet. I think he's the better wrestler. I think Nishikawa struggles to get the fight to the ground. I think he eats a lot of shots. I think Mustafaev eventually either starches him on the feet or pins him down against the cage and ground and pounds and give him Mustafaev by second round TKO.
We head now to the featherweight division, knock on wood, for a matchup between Zubaira Tukhugov and Lucas Almeida. Tukhugov, the 31-year-old Chechen, is 25-1 overall. He's 5-2-1 in the UFC. Notably, he's 2-1-1 since returning from a 3.5-year layoff that I'll get to in a moment. He fought most recently back at UFC 267 last October. That was the Halloween weekend card where he took a unanimous decision over Ricardo Ramos. Prior to that, he had not fought since September of 2020 when he lost a split decision to Hakeem Dawodu. He will look to keep up the winning ways against Almeida. The 31-year-old Brazilian is 14-1 overall. He is 1-0 in the UFC. Rather ironically, he made it to the UFC despite his only career loss being on the Contender Series. He dropped a unanimous decision to Daniel Zellhuber on the Contender Series back last September, went and won one more fight in Brazil, then got signed and fought in June, knocking out Mike Trizano in the third round at UFC Fight Night, Volkov versus Rosenstrike. Tukhugov, the slight favorite, he's minus 155. Almeida plus 120 on the comeback. Gonna toss this one to you first, Keith, but just a little background on Tukhugov for those who don't know or don't remember. He was a hot property joining the UFC out of, well, frankly, like a bunch of different European and Eastern European promotions, but joined the UFC, put together like a pretty good run, then lost a split decision to Renato Moicano back in 2016, disappeared from the sport for 3.5 years, and it's because he had a USADA suspension for Ostarine that was, I guess Ostarine is the official banned steroid of UFC 280, because we're going to be talking about Sean O'Malley later, but yeah, that and his role in the infamous Khabib-McGregor brawl, where he ran into the cage and sucker punched McGregor when he was sitting on the ground. Those two suspensions kind of overlapped and led to him being out of the sport for 3.5 years. Since he's been back, it's been a mixed bag. He's fought barely once per year, 2-1-1 since his return. He's missed weight once. Talk about redemption. He's a guy that is definitely in need of some. Otherwise, he's forever going to be the guy that ran and sucker punched McGregor, and that's what he's going to be remembered for.
Yeah.
Do you? I mean,
I think that you corrected that what he's going to be remembered for, not just at first you said he's always going to be the guy who ran it. Like, was that going to change, Ben? Like,
yeah.
Well, with Conor, it might.
Yeah. Do you see him doing anything here to kind of redeem his status as one of the division's up-and-comers? Who gets it done here?
Yeah, I mean, he's 31, so it's really now or never, like, especially in that weight class. I think he's got some good skills. He carries his hands a little low, which I don't like, but that's because
he's punching guys that are sitting on the ground.
Good point. He helps with your accuracy when they're drinking Gatorade, just chilling. After you fought Khabib too. He keeps his hands low because he likes to slip and rip. He is a pressure counter striker. I like that he lands at different angles. He has a sharp. He kind of throws that up jab. His left hook is his best strike. He likes to loop it over his opponent's like straight right. Very similar to like what we just saw with Mano Martinez. Plus power. I think he's an extremely good wrestler. He chain wrestles really well. He explodes through the hips. He cuts the corners well. Though in his last fight, he did struggle to take down Ricardo Ramos. But I actually think that's going to be more Ricardo Ramos really showing improvement in his takedown defense than it was Tukhugov getting the fight to the ground. He's got great top game, good ground and pound. And what I like best about, like, he struggled to get Ricardo Ramos down, but he didn't pass out. I mean, he didn't gas out. Like, he won late in the fight, which used to be a question mark with him. Now it actually looks like it might be a little bit of a strength. Now, again, a long time ago, like, he doesn't fight enough. Lucas Almeida, he's big for the weight class, but he isn't a great athlete. I'd say on the feet, he's a serviceable boxer. He likes to pressure. He likes to counter step. He moves pretty well. A lot of L step in, slip and rip style. When he counters, he throws a lot of shots, throws a lot of combinations. He's got some big power. He's got some He's got a good Muay Thai clinch. He can wrestle a little, and he has 4 submissions on his record, but he's a weak defensive wrestler, which obviously would be a big issue against someone like Tukhugov. This is also a big step up in competition for Almeida. Like he doesn't feel anybody as good as Tukhugov. I think Tukhugov is pretty close to a lock here. I think he's better than Almeida probably everywhere, especially on the ground, especially from the top position. I think he might hit some takedowns. Don't be surprised if he finds a submission too. I say Almeida's tough enough and crafty enough that I think he'll make it to the scorecards, but I think Tukhugov wins a pretty clear cut, like 30-27, could even be like a 30-26 decision.
I'm glad that you mentioned that Tukhugov's gas tank was a concern and like appears, at least in his sporadic appearances in the last couple of years, to be less of one, because I expected that to get worse, not better, as time came along. Like back in 2015, 2016, even if we didn't have the PED bust and the stupid brawl coming, and he was going to have fought 10 or 12 times by now instead of like 4, just even when he was on his way, first couple fights in the UFC, just he looked so drawn on the scale. Like I don't normally give much credence to the eyeball test, but he always looked so dehydrated on the scale, and he's so tall for the weight class. He just looked like a guy who had a brutal weight cut, and I figured he was going to be a lightweight by now. That was only reinforced like when he blew weight for one of his fights since coming back. But yeah, and I don't know. Maybe it's the Mackenzie Dern thing where age and maturity have made him take his own training more seriously. I don't know what it is. Maybe he found a better supplement that he doesn't get caught for. Maybe he got some of the juice from Dillashaw now. He's getting the EPO that helps his wind a little bit. I don't know. But on skills and on athleticism, I agree with you. He's much better than Almeida, and more to the point, he's much better than anyone Almeida has faced. Almeida faced, frankly, low-level competition on his way up. He lost to the first decent fighter he fought in Daniel Zellhuber on the Contender Series. And the guy in Zellhuber, he's not this ultra blue-chip prospect. He's a guy that has landed in the UFC, and it looks like he might stay for a minute. He went back and won a super low-level fight in Jungle Fight. And then, yeah, he knocked out Mike Trezano, but Trezano's been just kind of a massive disappointment since coming out of Tough. This is a huge step up for Almeida, and I don't know how much Tukhugov has got left, but if he is still the guy that beat Ramos last year, I'm with you. I don't use the term lock because, again, it just seems like tacitly encouraging people to take my words as betting advice, and as we never hesitate to remind people, we're not really a betting show. We say what the odds are because it's part of the setup, but I'm with you. I'm surprised that the line isn't wider here than it is, because not only is Tukhugov a better fighter, but his avenues to victory are clear, and they're likely to be available to him. And Almeida, the skills he has, if Tukhugov makes mistakes, Almeida, like, they're going to be the type of mistakes, and Almeida is not the fighter that's just going to make him pay with like a one-punch KO or take his back and the fight's over. Like Tukhugov's never getting out of there. Like, Tukhugov can make a huge mistake and lose a round. He's going to win the fight anyway. He could gas out horribly and have to hold on for the whole third round, and he's probably still going to win the fight. So I'm with you. I've got Tukhugov in this fight, and as confident as you can be about somebody who has fought as seldom as he has in the last couple of years, I'm pretty confident in this one as well. Next up, light heavyweights take the cage as Volkan Oezdemir and Nikita Krylov square off. Oezdemir, the 33-year-old from Switzerland, is 18-6 overall. He is 6-5 in the UFC. He did win his last time out. It was a unanimous decision victory over Paul Craig back in July at UFC Fight Night Blades versus Aspinall. That allowed him to put the brakes on a 2-fight skid against Yuri Prochazka and Magomed Ankalaev. He's going to look to make it 2 straight wins against Krylov. The 30-year-old Ukrainian is 28-9 overall. He is 9-7 in the UFC. He is 8-6 in the UFC at light heavyweight. He did fight his first 2 fights at heavyweight, and we will never speak of those 2 fights again. He was cut from the UFC prematurely. I mean, definitely prematurely considering they re-signed him. He is 3-4 since rejoining the UFC. He also won his last time out. It was a fast and ugly knockout of Alexander Gustafsson at UFC Fight Night Blades versus Aspinall. That for him also allowed him to stop a 2-fight skid against Ankalaev and Craig. Odds here, somewhat close, but Krylov is a moderate favorite. He's minus 175. Oezdemir plus 140. Keith, I talked off the top here about how the Karol Rosa versus Lina Lansberg fight is a bit of an indictment of the women's bantamweight division. Just, there's so little depth that you fall from, a near title eliminator to fighting an unranked fighter who's on the verge of being cut. Just there's nothing in between. This fight is a bit of an indictment of the light heavyweight division and just how aged they are and how long it's the same group of contenders that have kind of run in the same circles. Because Volkan Oezdemir, he is a perennial contender. He has probably spent more consecutive weeks in the Sherdog top 10 at light heavyweight than anybody else. Like, he might literally have been in the top in the Sherdog light heavyweight rankings longer than anybody else there right now.
They're all time.
That's in our current top 10.
Yeah.
The people in our current top 10 or top 15, he's probably been there longer than anyone else on the list. Like, he's certainly been there since knocking out Serkinov back in 2017. I don't think he's ever dropped out. Even when he lost 3 in a row, they were all the top 5 guys.
Yeah.
And then Krylov is a perennial fringe top 15 guy. And Oezdemir is barely 500 in the UFC, and Krylov is under 500 since he's been back. And that's just what we've got. It's light heavyweight. They're just desperate for someone to step up.
Which is so crazy, because that for the longest time was the glamour division of MMA. Mm-hmm. It was the division.
It was always a top-heavy division. It always had huge names at the top, great fighters at the top, but once you got past the top 15, the quality did kind of fall off.
Yeah, but I just think about when I think about the most exciting division,
oh yeah, for sure.
Got when you had Vanderlei Silva and Shogun and Quentin Jackson and Dan Henderson and Hikaru Arona.
Yeah,
you go over to the UFC, Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture and Vitor Belfort and Tito Ortiz. Yeah. And and to go from I just named 10 probably right there, to go that to Volkan Oezdemir and Nikita Krylov. Yeah, I just got depressed all of a sudden.
It is a bit depressing. It's hard for me to get a fix on where Oezdemir is right now competitively.
Yeah.
I mean, he's 33 and he feels older.
Yeah.
He's starting to feel like an old fighter. He beat Paul Craig back in July, but part of that is just that, if Paul Craig doesn't get the chance to do Paul Craig things, you're probably going to beat him. Even now, he's no longer just the king of the Hail Mary. He's got a little more than that, but still, he depends on his resilience and opportunism a lot to be able to win fights. Oezdemir never gave him a chance. But the thing is, even now, Oezdemir is 6-5 in the UFC. His losses are to Daniel Cormier, Anthony Smith, Dominic Reyes, Yuri Prochazka, and Magomed Ankalaev. They're all top. It's not top 10 fighters. They're all top 5 fighters.
Yeah, you had what?
You've got
I think you had 3 of them are champs. What was it?
Yeah.
DC.
Well, you got 2 champs. You got DC and Prochazka. You got 2 title challengers, Smith and Reyes. You got Ankalaev, who's going to be a title challenger,
and possibly champ.
And possibly champ. And then he's beaten everybody else. And while his win over Alexander Rakic, it was an Alexander Rakic fight. The rest of the time, you put him in the cage with someone else, he's detonated them. That's why he got so much hype behind him in the first place. He came out of nowhere. He was this unheralded guy who'd gotten tapped out embarrassingly in Bellator, disappeared, went and kickboxed for 2 years, came back, and won a couple fights in Europe, and then he blew up Misha Serkinov and Jimmy Manoa in a combined minute of cage time, and all of a sudden he's fighting Daniel Cormier for a title. All this to say, basically, he probably is aging, but he's still the same fighter he ever was. He's a bread and butter kickboxer who throws everything really, really hard and is okay everywhere else. He's not a great athlete. He's, you know, I think he's kind of slow and plodding. He's an okay kickboxer. His kickbox, it's not a thing of beauty. He's not Israel Adesanya. He's not Sean O'Malley that we're going to talk about, you know, when we get further up this card. It's not this beautiful ballet of violence. Like, he is a kickboxing slugger, and it still works sometimes, but against fighters who don't go away when he hits them clean, he doesn't have a plan B. He doesn't have a next thing he can do. And fighters who are niftier kickboxers than him, or anybody with a ground game, to have a pretty easy route to victory against him. You know, and that accounts for basically all his losses. Yuri Prochazka took the best he had, came back with more fire from the other direction. Anthony Smith, Daniel Cormier got him on the ground easy, and just took advantage of him. Krylov is more interesting. You know, like, when I say it's hard to believe that Oezdemir is only 33, it's because it feels like watching a 36 or 38-year-old. Yeah. And physically, when I say that I can't believe Krylov is only 30, it's because it feels like he's been in the UFC for 15 years. Yeah. You know, it's funny that he has the, like, back and forth 1-on-1 rivalry with OSP, because he really is kind of like a bleached OSP. Like, he's got an odd offensive skill set. It's all these mismatched parts that kind of go together, and they fit into a whole that it's weird but effective. And it's even some of the same things, like head kicks out of nowhere and a very idiosyncratic like submission grappling game.
Yeah. Like, one time he looks like great, and next time he looks terrible.
And one time he looks great, next time he looks absolutely terrible. Like OSP 8 years ago, he has physical gifts. He's big for the division. Yeah. I mean, he's listed at like 6'3", 205, but except for the true giants like Johnny Walker, he always feels like the bigger guy in the cage. Even like Paul Craig and Alexander Gustafsson were both like bigger than him by the tape, but Krylov didn't feel undersized. I think he's actually a pretty quick and fluid athlete. For, you know, and you and I are both, you know, disciples of Jordan Breen from way back. And one of my favorite rants of his was just how bad Krylov's UFC debut was against Soa Palele, like way back 9 years ago now, at heavyweight, just looking like a complete stumble bum, just clumsy, kind of pudgy, just one of the worst fights in UFC history, like talent wise. Well, before the last 3 years. And for that guy to turn into, you know, like a legit rankable light heavyweight is kind of remarkable. And he is still basically the same fighter he ever was. And you still just can't trust him from one fight to the next. Like, and just when I thought I could, like, I remember going to the Paul Craig fight, because you and I were already doing these shows by then. I mean, that was this past March. I was like, it's a new Krylov. He's 30 years old now, or he just barely turned 30. I'm like, he's turned a corner. He's done losing stupid fights to people he should beat. Like, I got him over Paul Craig. There's not going to be a Hail Mary submission. And I was right. There wasn't a Hail Mary submission. There was an early submission when he made a huge blunder and just like dove right into a triangle. And I'm sorry, coming back from that and knocking out Alexander Gustafsson in 67 seconds doesn't redeem you, because that was the shell of Gustafsson. I'm picking Krylov in this fight. He's the younger fighter. He has all of his physical gifts. He really is in his prime physically, and he probably is in his prime mentally. This might be the best Nikita Krylov we ever get. He just is the next OSP. He's going to win 2, lose 1, win 2, lose 1 until his body starts to quit on him. And anytime you think he's about to chain together enough wins to go on maybe a title run, he'll lose one in really dumb fashion. And anytime you think he's about to get cut, he's probably going to like win one he shouldn't. I'm picking Krylov in this one. In fact, I'm tempted to pick Krylov in a finish, but I'm not going to. Give me Krylov by decision. But if he does something dumb and Oezdemir plunks him, I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be either. I like you say Krylov's the next OSP, so are they gonna like talk about his college football days 20 years from now?
Yeah.
Hey, his team just won. So, um,
Tennessee.
yeah, I love that you mentioned, Oezdemir being like younger than he looks. When you say that, I was just thinking of like, you ever see those like articles of like 1980s, like NBA players, and they're like, hey, this guy, and he had like a high pulled up socks and everything, and
Yeah.
and short shirts, and he looked like he was like 38, and they're like, this guy was 23. Or like Greg Oden should have played back then. Yeah, that's like Oezdemir, like with his haircut, his balding on top and everything. He does look so.
When Greg Oden was 22, he looked like LeBron James does now. Like their faces were already kind of similar, and we're like LeBron's hair is just total struggle now. That's what Oden looked like as a senior in college. Like, yeah. I mean, this is going to sound horribly bigoted, but if he wasn't American, I would assume his birth certificate was fake and he was actually 10 years older than he really was. That would explain the knees also.
Yeah. No shit. So for a guy like Oezdemir, who's ranked for so long, he's not a great athlete. He's kind of slow. He's flat-footed. He's plodding. He marches forward, but he has good output, and he's a mid-range boxer with short strikes. He has we haven't seen that massive power he used to have, but like he still has like fight hurting power, fight changing power. His left hook is legendary. He gets in close quarters too, and he can dirty box some. I like you said, he's okay everywhere. Like he's not a wrestler, but he can sneak in a takedown every once in a while. I mean, he got takedowns against Dominic Reyes, Anthony Smith, Paul Craig. He has been taken down a bunch himself, which obviously is a problem. When he grapples, he obviously wants to be he's much better on the top. He isn't a submission threat, but I give him credit in his last fight because he showed ability to not get submitted by Paul Craig. And he also showed just a fight IQ, the difference that Nikita Krylov has with just the refusing to grapple with Craig. Krylov, he is a good athlete. You mentioned that. He does move well. He's pretty elusive. He has quick hands. He hit Alexander Gustafsson with some mean shots, mean uppercuts. He does drop his hands a little. He's big for the weight class you mentioned. He's got a good kicking game, but he isn't a great wrestler. Like he's got some solid offensive wrestling, and then he's been taken down by poor, weaker guys that you don't expect to take him down. So he is a submission threat. He has 15 career submissions. He almost caught Glovich's share in a submission, which would have been incredible. So this is one of the fights that it matters in the rankings, but in the overall the card, it's not one that I'm too excited about. Krylov is so inconsistent. If good Krylov shows up, he beats Oezdemir. If bad Krylov shows up, he loses. He does have two avenues of victory, though. While I really think Oezdemir really only has one avenue of victory, and that's, well, I guess he has a couple. And one would be to catch him on the feet. The other one would be, I guess, Krylov doing something really stupid, which could happen. So I think he might get hit. I think Oezdemir might land some big shots, but I think we're going to have a back and forth battle, and I'm leaning to the younger guy. So give me Krylov by split decision.
This is a card where a lot of the fighters on the card have fought each other in the past. I probably should have been mentioning that all along. Abubakar and Nurmagomedov and Mokaev fought like on the Russian regional scene before either of them got to major promotions. Lots of these guys have fought each other. This next fight certainly features someone who has history with other people on the card, as it is Caio Borralho versus Makhmud Muradov. Muradov, the 32-year-old, born in Tajikistan, raised in Uzbekistan, moved to the Czech Republic as a young adult just to escape economic and political strife, but really based out of the Czech Republic. He is 25-7 overall. He is 3-1 since joining the UFC out of, well, Czech Republic promotions, Octagon MMA, XFN, where he was actually a champ. He lost his last time out. It was a second-round submission at the hands of Gerald Meerschaert, the Paul Craig of the middleweight division. Prior to that, he had won his first three in a row over Alessio Di Chirico, Trevor Smith, and Andrew Sanchez. So he'll look to get back in the W column against Borralho, the 29-year-old Brazilian who has sort of come out of nowhere this year to be one of the UFC's breakout fighters of 2022. He is 12-1 overall, with one no contest, but his loss was in his second career fight. I mean, he's on a 12-fight unbeaten streak. He joined the UFC out of the Contender Series. He appeared twice last fall, basically. He beat Aaron Jeffrey in September, turned around, came back like 3 weeks later, literally, and beat Jesse Murray. After that second appearance, he did get the UFC contract. So basically, we need to make a matchup of 185-pound fighters who had to fight twice on the Contender Series to get to the UFC. Bo Nickel versus Caio Borralho. Book it after this. There's my Bo Nickel reference for the...
No, don't do that yet.
don't do that. No.
No.
Like, because, dude, this is a fight that could be a hell of a fight a year or two from now.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway, my gratuitous Bo Nickel reference aside, after getting signed to the UFC, Caio Borralho debuted this April, beat Gadzhi Omargadzhiev, who we've already talked about with that weird technical decision, then came back in July and took a unanimous decision over Armen Petrosyan, whom we've already talked about. He will try to make it 3 straight. He is the favorite to do so. He's minus 220, Muradov plus 180 on the comeback. Keith, this is a division desperately in need of new blood. It is desperately waiting for someone to step up and win enough fights in a row to merit a fight with Israel Adesanya. It's why Israel Adesanya is fighting a 5-0 former kickboxer, coming up here. It's the reason he went up to 205 last year to, just give himself something to do so that he's not on the tour of rematches. It's kind of like women's flyweight in that way. There's just like, we need someone to step up and keep things busy until this crop of interesting prospects comes. And that crop of interesting prospects just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, I'm more excited about the middleweight division than I have been in probably 5 or 6 years. Like, by the time Rockhold beat Weidman even, I was like, man, this division's going to need some help pretty soon. It's needed help ever since. And now I feel like there's like 10 or 12 middleweights with 3 or fewer fights in the UFC that have tons of upside. And these are 2 of them. Well, Muradov, I guess, has 4 now, but like these are 2 of those guys. Tell me what you think of them, like both right now and going forward, and tell me who you think wins this one.
Yeah, it's an intriguing matchup between two guys that a lot of people are excited about. Muradov, I mean, he's an elite athlete. You see that's he fights as an athlete, not as a striker, grappler, or something like this. He's explosive. He on the feet, he can fight out of both stances. Really good footwork, moves really well. He's a definition of fluid. He's technically sound, though he does drop his hands a little bit, but he uses feints so well to draw attacks so he can counter. Nice jab. I love his overhand right. Crushes. He'll like throw it overhand right and then come back around with a left hook, just crushing the body. Has big power. He loves his athletic moves like flying knees, but he has almost no offensive grappling. And to his credit, you can tell he's worked on his defensive grappling. He's pretty hard to take down. Like, I give him that. Like, obviously he runs into a German Marshall. That's what German Marshall does. He's such a crafty guy. Now, Borralho, we talked about it already. Like, this guy's massive. He looks like a heavyweight. He's huge. He's a southpaw, long and lengthy. He does keep his chin a little too high in the air, which I don't like. But his striking has come a long way. He's pretty sharp. He's accurate. He marches down his opponent with pressure. He's got a really good straight left, good kicking game. He likes to throw a flying knee. He's an okay wrestler. He's more of like a grappler than a wrestler, but he's a wizard if he gets the fight to the ground, smothering top control. I love that he inches at a time and before, when he's advancing on the ground. He doesn't rush a submission. He's got mean ground and pound. He's a weak defensive wrestler, though we saw in his last fight, he hit a beautiful sweep as soon as the fight hit the ground. Great back takes. If he puts the hooks in, they talk about like how it's almost impossible to get out because of how long his legs are. He had 3 submissions, and he showed his last fight. He has good cardio. Like he was still going hard, winning the fight deep in the 3rd round. This is probably your striker versus grappler matchup. While Borralho isn't an elite wrestler, he has taken down better wrestlers than Muradov. I expect him to get the fight to the ground, And you talked about like 2 elite prospects. I see a good prospect, and then I see an elite prospect. I think Borralho is going to win this one pretty easily. I think he's going to slowly inch to a dominant position. I think he's going to lock his submission. I think he's going to submit him in the very first round. Give me Borralho by first round submission.
Yeah, it's hard not to be excited about Borralho as one of the stars of this class of incoming middleweight prospects, and I'm excited for Muradov. As you mentioned, he brings a rare level of athleticism to the division and just is capable of doing eye-popping things. But it's been a little over a year since his last fight, and his last fight was just such a problem for me because he managed to get pulled into just the ultimate classic Gerald Meerschaert fight. He won the first round easily. He knocked Meerschaert down, I think, within 30 seconds in the second round, and a minute later, Meerschaert's on his back and Muradov is tapping, and you're like, and this is nothing against Meerschaert, because that is what Meerschaert has made, frankly, like, amazing career out of. I think he's got like 26 career submissions, like not all of them in the UFC, but he's one of the most prolific submission fighters in MMA over the course, of his era. But if you're that susceptible on the ground that like Gerald Meerschaert, a hurt, rung up Gerald Meerschaert does that to you that easily, like what is a fresh Caio Borralho going to do to you? I could see, like, I have to imagine that Muradov is going to be smart enough to treat the floor like lava for the first round and just know that whatever chances he has of winning this fight, they're by far better on the feet. I'll be interested to see whether that curtails some of his wilder, more high amplitude techniques. Like, if he throws a flying knee at Borralho and gets caught out of the air and thrown onto the ground within the first 60 seconds of the fight, I'm rolling my eyes and, going to the fridge to get a drink because I think I know how this thing ends. But if he's cautious and kind of uses ranged kickboxing to keep Borralho at bay, I could see him making it to the second round. But I do think Borralho is going to get him to the ground at some point. And once he's there, I do agree that it's going to be pretty quick work for him. Borralho he's an elite grappler for MMA. He's just heavy as a ton of bricks on top. Shockingly quick back takes for a guy his size. He is the size of a house. We have him listed at 6'1". I have the feeling he might be taller than 6'1".
Yeah.
He
fights like Fabricio Verdum.
I was literally about to say that
he's like built like him too. It's weird.
No, that's what I was going to say. Like, he's literally like a middleweight Fabricio Verdum in that, yeah, you get a little jaded if all you see is the tail of the tape. And you're like, well, yeah, every UFC top 50 in heavyweight, he's like is 6'2", 6'3", 250, 255, 260. But then you get in front of them and you realize there's a difference. And it's not always related to how good they are. Like, just for example, I've been in the room a lot of times with Derek Lewis. And Derek Lewis, from across the room, you're like, oh, that's a pretty big guy. And it's only when you get up right in front of him and you're like, oh, God, you're like a chest freezer on stilts. Like, you are huge. And then you shake his hand and your hand just disappears into his hand. Like Derek Lewis is just a massive dude up close.
Sorry, I was saying I met Greg Hardy. It was like the same way. I was like, holy shit, this guy's huge.
Yeah, like I was at the UFC fight night where Hardy beat Juan Adams. And it's interesting because Juan Adams was the other example I was going to use. I've been in the room a lot of times with Juan Adams where Lewis, like the closer you get to him, you realize, oh, you're huge. When Juan Adams walks into the room, even if your back is to him, you're like, who the hell was that? Like, just your radar for like a dinosaur-sized creature just goes,
Another one is
like
Leighton Vassell. Like, how that guy ever fought at 205 is, I've seen him and I'm like, holy shit. Another one, I don't know how he fights at 205 I've seen him in Bellator a lot, is Liam McGarry. Like, he's freaking huge.
And I mean, there's something with him because he's like 6'5".
Yeah.
But I'm sure once you get, dude, Leighton Vassell, one of the first interviews I ever did with Sherdog was Leighton Vassell. And it was his first fight at heavyweight after just killing himself to make 205. It was right after Phil Davis head kicked him and he was just like, I'm moving up to heavyweight.
Yeah.
And the relief in his voice, because I talked to him and he's like, He's like, I should have done this a long time ago. He's like, I've never been able to fight more than twice in a year because it takes me basically a 16-week camp to be able to fight at 205. He's like, I'll do an 8-week fitness camp just to get from my walking weight of like 245 down to like 225. And then I'll do my actual training camp for the other fighter and then like a hard water cut. And he's like, I'm like, so how's it feel to just be able to fight at your weight? And he's like, oh, I can eat carbs again, mate. He's like, he was just the relief in his voice. Like he just sounded like a drought, like a man just crawling out of the desert and finding water. He's like, I can have carbs again. Linton Basel, good dude. And as soon as he moved up to heavyweight, he instantly started weighing in at like 248 and looked basically the same. It's like, yeah. Anyway, that's a long aside from me saying I was literally thinking of Caio Borralho as a middleweight Verdum, because Verdum, yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, you're the size of an 18-wheeler. Like how, yeah. It's that kind of thing with Borralho. But he seems to make 185 comfortably. Maybe that's a product of being in his 20s, and we'll see him at light heavyweight eventually, but it's not like he'll be undersized for that division either. Here, I'm thinking Borralho gets a second-round submission. Like Muradov, I think will be smart enough to keep his distance in the first round. Maybe, keep Borralho backed off with, some threats of head kicks and things, but Borralho will get him down maybe late in the first round, then gets him down the second round, and this thing is over. So give me Borralho by second round submission. Next up at UFC 280, and what appears to be the top prelim, is a high-stakes welterweight matchup between Belal Muhammad and Sean Brady. Muhammad, the 34-year-old Palestinian-American fighting out of Chicago, is 21-3 with one no contest overall. He is 12-3 with one no contest since joining the UFC as a former standout in Titan FC. He is currently on an 8-fight unbeaten streak since losing by decision to Jeff Neal just a little under 3 years ago. He has 7 wins and then one no contest. That, of course, was his title eliminator fight against Leon Edwards last March, where he, came in on short notice, competitive first round, gave way to a second round where he took a horrible eye poke within the first few seconds, and the fight was off, ending in disappointment for all involved because Edwards had to go wait again for his long overdue title shot. He, of course, is now your champ. And Muhammad, who had the chance to kind of cut the line at 170, has won 3 straight since then over very good fighters, and is still on the outside looking in at the title picture. Since that Edwards fight, he has beaten Damian Maia, that was last June, Stephen Thompson last December, and most recently, Vicente Luque, whom he beat by unanimous decision in the headliner of UFC on ESPN 34 this April. He is going to look to make it 4 straight wins, 9 straight fights without a loss, basically getting into Leon Edwards territory himself against Brady, one of the UFC's kind of triumvirate of hot, unbeaten welterweight prospects, along with Shavkat Rakhmonov and, of course, Khamzat Chimaev. The 29-year-old Renzo Gracie Philly product is a perfect 15-0 as a professional mixed martial artist. He is 5-0 since joining the UFC out of CFFC, where, he would have been... no, he was CFFC champ. Yeah, I thought for a sec the UFC had snatched him up too early, but no. Yeah, he is 5-0. He has beaten Court McGee, Ismail Nardiev, Christian Aguilera, Jake Matthews, and most recently, last November, Michael Chiesa, whom he beat via unanimous decision at UFC Fight Night Vieira versus Tate. Fresh off of his first top 10 win at welterweight, even though it's been almost a year since then, Brady looks to make it 6 straight in the UFC, vault himself into the title picture, keep pace with his 2 running mates. He is slightly favored to do so. Brady, minus 150. Muhammad plus 120 as the slight underdog. Keith, I know that you don't look at betting lines at all. Like, I know a lot of times you just hear about them incidentally, but a lot of the time you don't know what the line is until I say it to you right before, and you've already done all your tape study, you're ready to talk about the fight, and sometimes you'll express your surprise at the line I just told you.
I was just surprised right then.
I mean, it's where one of the items on the Shillen and Duffy bingo card, and I'm going to make those one day.
Yeah.
There's a space on the Shillen and Duffy bingo card that says fighter A should not be a minus 400 favorite over anybody in the UFC. Were you surprised at this line?
Yeah.
And like, I'm not gonna. I mean, I'm gonna slightly tip my hand here, but I am gonna like have you go first. But like, I don't think enough respect is being put on Muhammad's.
That's the exact word I was thinking of.
Like, he's taken the mantle from Leon Edwards.
Yeah, dude. We're like in sync right now. Exactly the words I was gonna say the same thing. Like, he's a new Leon Edwards. It's because of his style. It's not fun. It's not exciting. He just gets the job done, gets a win, gets his paycheck, moves on. He's like a Caitlin Chikagian of the welterweight division.
And like Caitlin Chikagian, he is an interesting and engaging interview if you ask him questions. But he's not a soundbite. If you need just a soundbite of him saying something outrageous for the hype reel, he ain't that guy.
No.
Which
he's coming off. Think about it. He's coming off a main event win against a multi-time former challenger in Stephen Thompson. His best win of his career.
He blanked Thompson, and then it was Luque versus Muhammad was.
That's what I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It was Luque. I mixed him up. Yes.
Against Luque, a guy that again, like, Luque is a savage finisher. Just
same thing.
Muffled him, like, just
same exact thing. Did it to Damian Maia before that. I mean, they go to Damian Maia, but still. And who knows what was going to happen in the Leon Edwards fight? It was too early. It was the very beginning of the second round.
It was too early, and
nothing really happened.
I'm starting to spit my notes out. Like, here, maybe I am going to go first, because it is a shame that that's all we got, because there is something in me that says Belal Muhammad is built for 5-round fights, and if he can get to the point where he's in 5-round fights every time, he's going to go from a good fighter to one of the great fighters of his era. It's not going to be pretty, but man, looking at this fight, I understand the hype behind Brady, because he's been dominant. I mean, he's considered by a lot of people informally, and you and I both the same, because I've asked you to kind of be the guy lagging behind in the, Rachmanov, Chimaev, Brady kind of, 3-horse race. And we've both said that he of the three is probably the one who will take the first L. But this is a tough fight. I'm picking Muhammad here. And you know why? Because Brady's best routes to victory are right in Muhammad's wheelhouse. Brady, if he's going to win this, he's going to need to take Muhammad down and spend significant amounts of time in top position grappling, like top control, working to advance, throwing ground and pound, getting mat returns, and just smothering and keeping his opponent down. I mean, that was the McGee win. That was the Nardiev win. He finished like Christian Aguilera, but it all started from taking the guy down. And when he gets up, you take him down again, and you take him down again. And it's worked for Brady so far, but he looks like a guy who's going to get tired late in fights. Yeah. He is the size of a house. He has a wrestling style that doesn't spare his gas tank. There are some MMA wrestlers that they can take you down and keep you down, and you're getting tired faster than they are.
Yeah.
Sean Brady sometimes looks to me like he's getting tired faster even when he's dominating things, and that all spells disaster against Muhammad, who is a great MMA wrestler.
Yeah.
One of the most underrated wrestlers in the UFC, and has a seemingly endless gas tank.
Yeah.
Just a combination of smart pacing and just good wrestling. I think Muhammad is built for 5-round fights. And if this were a 5-round fight, I'd be even more confident, since, he's had several in the UFC, and, Brady has not.
I wonder how Abu Dhabi will do for him too, being a Muslim American, that's part of his culture. Abu Dhabi, I wonder how, we don't get into that kind of what motivation and that, but it seemed like that could be a motivating factor.
Oh, sure. I mean, and And think of it, when how badly an Italian American fighter would want to fight in Italy. Like even leaving aside like geopolitics and religion, he is, I believe, a second generation child of Palestinian refugees.
Was it Palestine? I thought it was Iraq.
Yeah, it's Palestine. No, it's Palestine.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, like he carries the Palestinian flag. When the UFC isn't being weird about flags, he has the Palestine.
Is it Dariush that has Iraqi ties?
Dariush is, I mean, we'll talk about him in a minute. Okay. He's of Iranian descent. He's ethnically Assyrian. And there is no nation of Assyria anymore, but it is a national, it's an ethnic group with a, I mean.
I know Jewish is tied to Israel.
Yeah, but they probably wouldn't. They might not love the comparison, but there's a group of, hundreds of thousands or a couple million people that are descendants of ancient Assyrians, and whatever country they're living in, they are also, it's an ethnic identity.
Nation and religious type thing. Okay. We've hit all the bingo cards.
We're I can't wait for the comment section on this one. But I could see Brady winning the first round. He's going to be bigger and physically stronger than Muhammad. I could see him getting takedowns, but Muhammad is calm to a fault. He's not going to, even if Muhammad loses the first round decisively, Brady gets 4 minutes of top time, Muhammad gets slammed back down, because that's part of Brady's thing. Brady doesn't do the easy mat return. He does the teach you a lesson mat return. Yeah. And what that basically means is he's doing deadlifts with a man his own size. Yeah. Even if Muhammad loses the first round, I'm feeling pretty comfortable in this pick. I don't even think it's where Muhammad is too much too soon for Brady. I think Muhammad might just be a better fighter than Brady.
Could be.
And we're going to see the ceiling, of where Brady's, at least his skill set and his approach that have gotten him so far, they're kind of meet their roadblock here. Brady is still young. He's at a great camp. I mean, we're talking about, if this happens, it'll be the first loss for Team Daniel Gracie since we've been counting.
No, someone lost. No. It was
Sabatini?
David Jackson.
Damon Jackson.
Yeah, Sabatini.
Yeah.
Lost to Jackson.
There you go.
But still, they're something 15-1 or something crazy like that.
But Brady still 29, and could certainly regroup, retool. But I think Muhammad's going to win this one. Give me Muhammad by decision, because that's how Muhammad wins. And he wins the second and third rounds for sure. If he wins the first, great. If not, again, I'm not worried. If I'm a betting guy, I'm taking Muhammad as the underdog. He loses the first round, I'm not worried.
Yeah, one of those ones that you might want to live bet the fight if you get even better odds.
If he loses the first round, and the odds swell.
Yeah. So Belal Muhammad, we were in sync in that about just disrespected because of his style of fighting. He's a well-rounded fighter that he's a little undersized for the division, and he's going against a guy, Sean Brady, who's just a thick guy. He is your classic overachiever. When you write down the columns of, and you say positive skill sets versus negative, you're not gonna have these things that really jump out at you with Belal Muhammad. But you said it right. He's about game plan. It's about putting himself in the best avenue of victory, the best chance to win, and he sticks to it. He uses movement really well. He uses a lot of feints to set up his attacks. He's got a busy jab, a lot of variety in his attacks. I like that he works the body. Underrated power. He's not going to knock you out one punch, but he can sting you. Great calf kicks. He does get hit for a guy who's high in the rankings. He gets hit a little bit too much for my liking, and that's due to a lack of head movement and just a lack of athleticism. And he's been hurt a lot, but he's got this amazing ability to recover, like we're going to talk about Charles Oliveira, where he can get hurt, and not to that extent where Charles Oliveira almost looks like he's getting knocked out. But my point is Belal Muhammad can have his nose broken, eyes blooded up, and he's still going to grind out and win a fight. He's such a good wrestler. He's got good timing on dropping on the hips of his opponents with his driving through his head. He's relentless to get there. Good tap control, good back tanks, and he's a builder. He gets stronger as the fight goes on. and cardio he's one of these guys where cardio is a weapon. Sean Brady, I think he's a better striker than you might give him a little credit to. He's really tight, compact boxer. He's got some pretty fast hands. He does hit hard. I like that he also crushes the body, thudding leg kicks. Like, that's the best way I can describe it. Like, it's not an Ensign Barboza slap. It's like a thud. He's very physically strong. He's strong, just to power guys against the cage, grind in there. He can batter his foes in like those close quarters, slicing elbows. He can drop down and just use his power. All he needs is to get like his hand behind your knee at all, and you're going to go flying. Good reactionary double. He's a good grappler, but he's definitely like a top side grappler, similar to like a Chris Weidman in his rise up. He stays glued to his opponents, hard ground and pound. He is a BJJ black belt. Paul Feld is always talking about that like legendary guillotine that he has. He's got some great back takes. He took Michael Chiesa, who's known for his grappling. He took his back a bunch of times. He was putting on Michael Chiesa in the early part of that match. He has 4 submissions, and he one of his submissions he subbed Jake Matthews. And Jake Matthews is a good grappler, a good prospect in himself. He took out Christian Aguilar with a sub. The biggest concern I have is the same that you had, is that gas tank. He looked exhausted against Michael Chiesa in a fight that he was way ahead. Where Chiesa, he came out where he was like survival mode, just hanging on at the end. But I look back in his rise up the rankings. He's gone into championship rounds when he was, on the regional scene as a champion and stuff. That gives me a little more confidence that it might have been just one of these fights where he didn't pace himself that much. That said, I don't know if you can pace yourself against a guy like Belal Muhammad. On paper, this is a win for Brady. He's the better overall fighter. He's got the better tools. But Muhammad is such a gamer, and he has all the intangibles. That third round really scares me. If this was a 5-round fight, I would lock Muhammad in. I shouldn't say lock him in, but I would be so confident in Muhammad. 15 minutes. It changes it. It gives Brady a much better chance, and I'm actually going to go with Brady. I think Brady's going to get some takedowns. I think he's going to land some power shots against Muhammad. I think he's going to bank 2 rounds, and it might be where Muhammad's coming on. It's just a little too late. So give me Brady by decision. But again, would you say he was almost like a 2-1 favorite or something like that?
-150. So
okay, all right. Yeah, not too bad. But I would thought this. I thought it'd be the other way around. I thought Muhammad would be like the -150, and so I was putting it down one of my upset.
But imagine if Sean Brady was 15-1 and he had a meaningless loss at like 185 in his second fight. Right. The odds would be different, even though it has no bearing.
That's right. Absolutely. Good point.
The underrated power of the magical 0 in the L column. It's something. The UFC 280 main card powers on with the fight that, depending on the outcome, is more likely to make Dana White swear into his hand while sitting cage side. It is Katlyn Chookagian versus Manon Fiorot. Chookagian, the 33-year-old, she's 18-4 overall. She is 11-4 in the UFC. She is 9-3 since dropping to flyweight. She dropped from 135 to 125 basically as soon as there was a division for her to do so. And she is 9-3. She is on a 4-fight win streak since her first round loss to Jessica Andrade 2 years ago. She has beaten Cynthia Calvillo, Viviane Araújo, Jennifer Maia, and Amanda Ribas, all 4 by decision. The Amanda Ribas win was a split decision. Of course, they were decisions because she is the UFC record holder for most consecutive wins by decision. I believe it's 10 or 11 decision wins in a row for her.
Congratulations.
She will look to make it 5 wins in a row. I don't know if she wants them all to be by decision, but she's by hook or by crook, she wants to make it 5 in a row against Fiorot. The 32-year-old French woman is 9-1 overall. She is a perfect 4-0 since joining the UFC as a former champ in UAE Warriors, as well as South Africa's EFC promotion. She is going to also try to make it 5 wins in a row, kind of elbow her way to the front of the flyweight title shot line that we just finished talking about last week. She is a comfortable favorite to do so. Fior minus 200, Chikagian plus 160. Keith.
Are you kidding me?
Keith.
I can't believe that line. I can't believe it.
I mean, we just finished talking about Belal Muhammad versus Sean Brady, where my problem was Sean Brady is favored, and Sean Brady's routes to victory go right through what Belal Muhammad does best. Well, Manon Fior is a boxer, and she has to beat a woman who her entire calling card as a top-level MMA fighter is snake charming strikers on the feet.
Yeah. I'm shocked. I'm not a gambler. It's not me. I know there's more to just who's going to win. I know a lot of it has to do them planning how money comes in, and I understand that part. I remember, and listen, I get picks wrong all the time, so I'm not trying to be cocky, but I remember UFC 255. It was Katlyn Chikagian versus Cynthia Calvillo. I just looked it up. Katlyn Chikagian was a plus 205 underdog, and I remember saying like, that is one of the worst lines ever. It should be the completely flipped on the opposite. She should be the massive favorite, the negative 230 favorite or whatever, something like that. It was one of the most confident picks I ever had of an underdog. And I'm like, is it just a Katlyn Chikagian thing because she doesn't wow you, that they're not giving her respect? Katlyn Chikagian's good. Now, I want to say this about Katlyn Chikagian. You want me to go first? Because I kind of just jumped in.
No, I mean, absolutely.
Okay, sorry. So Katlyn Chikagian, I'll say this. So when you have 14 fights, you have to sacrifice some tape study. And I said, you know what? First person that said Katlyn Chikagian. Like, I've seen her enough. She's just in that Sam Alvey realm with me. I don't want to watch tape study of her anymore. So all my notes,
like if Sam Alvey were still a top 3 fighter, but like I get the analogy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Sam Alvey was really good. So all my notes are the same as my last notes. I didn't even try to fake it, like switch how I'm saying things to make it seem like, I'm reading basically my notes right down A to Z, right down. So she's a long and lengthy fighter who's really big for the weight class. She uses movement really well. She's an out fighter with high volume. She throws straight punches down the pipe, very busy jab. I say that she fights like Holly Holm, where she will trick the judges and think she's landing when she's not. She goes in that empty space, but she makes that like karate, tennis player sound where, so she's not doing anything, but looks like she's doing it. She throws a lot of kicks, likes side kicks. She's a greatly underrated grappler. She's one of the best grapplers in the division. Good entries, heavy top pressure. The only negative about her grappling is she has one submission on her record. Now, Muo to Manon Fior, it's funny that I'm like saying like, oh my God, Katlyn Chikagian is this huge underdog.
You were early on the train.
Oh yeah, Manon Fior is like, I love Manon Fior. She's a southpaw who's a technically sound striker. Some really good movement, a lot of like cut angles, a lot of L step in to avoid strikes, really quick hands. She has a rare ability to land while backing up, but her volume bothers me a little bit, and especially the last fight against Jennifer Maia. She can coast a little bit. She has that Jorge Masvidal, I'm winning, that I have so much striking background, that traditional striking, boxing, kickboxing, that the landing strikes matters more than like just being busy. She did against Jennifer Maia. The fight was much closer than it should have been. She has great kicks. Teep kicks are really her specialty. I like that she understands that this is an MMA fight, though. That she won't just, which is kind of ironic after what I just said about her in her striking, but she does realize that like I should go for a takedown every once in a while. I like her entries. I think she's actually a pretty solid offensive grappler. She's pretty solid on top, and she's got good power. Like, she's a physically strong woman. She's explosive. That said, like, even though you look at rankings, Jennifer Maia to Katlyn Chikagian is not a big step up in rankings, but just the style, the trickiness of Katlyn Chikagian is a big step up. And, Katlyn Chikagian is going to win this fight. Like, she's going to play her outside game. She's going to do nothing. When Fior gets into range, she's going to smother in the clinch or shoot a takedown. But, like, I don't think I swore yes. I get my one swear in. Like, fuck it. Fero's my girl. I'm going to come out and say she's more aggressive than we've ever seen. I say she starts tagging up Caitlin Chikagian. I say she might even hurt her 1 or 2 times, and Fero wins a split decision. And I have like negative confidence in that pick.
Yeah, you touched on all the same.
I hedged my bet a little bit, saying like, yeah, but I did say Caitlin Chikagian going to win, but I picked Fero, so no matter what, I'm taking a win.
Like, I like everything you put out there about both of these fighters. Obviously, you mentioned Manon's fight against Jennifer Maia, and MMA math is never perfect, and sometimes it's actively misleading. But here I think it's kind of instructive because we're talking about women with the same general routes to victory, and Fior's fight with Maia was closer than it needed to be. Chikagian's was not close. She easily won all 3 rounds. Like, none of them was even really arguable. Like, Chikagian just never let Maia get out of first gear. Like, she did the snake charmer thing. Looking at Fior's, her physical gifts are next level. I mean, you look at her, she's built like a superhero, but there are plenty of fighters that are built like elite athletes and don't, like, it turns out they don't really move like elite athletes. That is not the case with her. And because of that, because of her just like smooth athleticism, her speed, her power, and not just talking about punching power, but just like her physical strength, in terms of routes to victory, it goes against everything in her fight style, but to just blitz Chikagian with pure power like Jessica Andrade did is something she could do. But that is something she's literally never done, is like approach a fight like that. Like, Fior approaches fights in a very composed manner, almost to her detriment, as you pointed out, like doesn't throw enough volume, and because of that, lets rounds be closer than they need to be against fighters that are just not as skilled or physically talented as she is. And it's worked so far. I mean, she's 9-1, 10. Yeah, she's 9-1. She lost her pro debut, and it was to Leah McCourt. Leah McCourt is a top 10 fighter at featherweight. Leah McCourt is freaking huge. Like, that's it. And it's meaningless. It was like McCourt's second fight and her first fight. Since then, she's been perfect. So we're criticizing an approach that's worked so far because, I mean, we need to find something to fill the time. And, we're picking her in a fight here that is easily the best fighter she's ever fought. I mean, Caitlin Chikagian is one of the ultimate high-level gatekeepers of the last 10 or 15 years in the UFC. She is the Holly Holm, Joseph Benavidez, John Fitch level. Like, yeah, I can't beat the champ, but I can beat everyone else really bad. We're to the point where she just becomes a problem for a division. That's Caitlin Chikagian. We mentioned on last week's recap that we were surprised the UFC re-signed her because they had a chance to walk away clean, and it would have been a travesty because she's one of the best fighters in the world. So if you claim to have the best fighters in the world and you let a top 5 fighter go, that undercuts you. But it sure would have made it the next year or two for the division easier, because there's a good chance here that Chikagian like snuffs one of the top up and coming prospects in the division, and she's not a 23-year-old like Aaron Blanchfield or like a 24-year-old like Miranda Maverick. Manon Fior is 32 and has had a boxing career already. Like, it's go time. And I'm with you. I think this is going to be too much for her, specifically because of the style matchup. Fior has the power to hurt Chikagian, but plenty of people have the power to hurt Chikagian, and almost nobody ever does, because it takes not only... I mean, who's really done it? Jessica Andrade, Valentina Shevchenko. Aside from that, Chikagian's losses are a split decision to Liz Carmouche, and, she got ground up by Carmouche, and a split decision to Jessica Ai. Both of those were top 10 fighters, and neither of them really did her much damage. They just won rounds with, by doing more on offense. The people who've really hurt her are one of the top 2 women in the sport, one of the top 3 women in the history of the sport, and Jessica Andrade, who is like maybe the most explosive, like one strike offensive fighter on the women's side, period. like I'd put her against anyone at 115, 125, or 135 for like instant kill shot power.
She's triple threat. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And Andrade had the ability, like the physical ability to do that, and the mental approach of coming out like a house on fire. Fior has one of those things, not the other. And Fior is a sneaky good takedown artist, sneaky good on the ground, but she's going against someone who is very, very good on the ground. Chookagian, I mean, for a long time, there have always been certain fighters with like mythically great ground games. Like, you know, we've always heard that like Shogun's ground game was great, but you know, we saw fits and flashes of it. He has a few highlights. His best moments on the ground are surviving against grapplers who are supposed to destroy him, like surviving against Arona, surviving against Lil Nog, and like Kneebar and Kevin Randleman, which, whatever. And, you know, people used to say that kind of thing about Keith Jardine, you know, oh, dude, you should see his, you know, ground game. Like, we never saw his ground game. You know, we saw his weird, like, broken Xbox controller, like, you know, kickboxing. Chookagian, like, is a great ground fighter, and we get to see it from time to time. Like, she'll take people down, and she's good on the ground, and when people take her down, she either gets back up or she sweeps and then, you know, escapes and goes back to doing what she wants to do. There just aren't many plausible avenues to victory for Fior, even though, like, she's a fantastic fighter. Just Chookagian is a problem for this division. Give me Chookagian in a decision, and I think it's gonna, like, Chookagian. She's kind of like it's almost unfair to call her the female Cyril Gane, because she's done more in her division than Gane has done in his.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, like, Gane got an interim title in, like, you know, one of the worst divisions in the sport, or at least always one of the most shallow ones. Whereas Chookagian is just hung around as the number 2 woman in this division, behind behind one of the best fighters in the sport for several years now. And I think it keeps going here. They were going to make this for the UFC France card, and it had to get bumped because, you know, Fior, she had to withdraw, so it got pushed to this one. And this only happened because Chookagian was willing to take it. Like, nobody wanted to fight Fior in France, and Chookagian was like, I'll take it.
Yeah.
And now she ends up here. She's going to pick up another check, pick up another win bonus, and Dana White's going to break something tasteful under the table. Next up, on the ridiculously, embarrassingly stacked main card of UFC 280 is a 155-pound matchup between Beneil Dariush and Mateusz Gamrot. Dariush, the 33-year-old Iranian-American of Assyrian ethnic heritage. He carries that Assyrian flag to the cage. Kind of cool. You never see it. Anyway, 21-4-1 overall. He is 15-4-1 in the UFC. He has won 7 straight fights since his shocking knockout loss to Alexander Hernandez almost 4 years ago. The wins in that stretch: Thiago Moises, Drew Dober, Frank Camacho, Drakkar Klose, Scott Holtzman, Diego Ferreira, and most recently, last May at UFC 262, Tony Ferguson, whom he beat via dominant unanimous decision. Looked like he might get a technical submission there for a minute as he bullied Ferguson on the ground in a way we've really seen only very rarely and only very recently. After a layoff of over a year, he is back trying to make it 8 straight, trying to get his name back into the conversation in the lightweight title picture. He was right there a year ago, trying to prove he's still right there. In his way will be Gamrot. The 31-year-old Pole is 21-1 with 1 no contest overall. He is 4-1 in the UFC since joining as a former 2-division champ in KSW. He's the former featherweight and lightweight champ. I mean, just know that he was the lightweight champ and defended multiple times, and he took a one-off fight and snatched the vacant 145-pound belt, I think just to prove he could, but 155 is his division, and you'll see why if you haven't seen him before when he walks into the cage, because he does not look like a featherweight. Gamrot lost his UFC debut by split decision to Guram Kutateladze. Since then, he's perfect, having beaten Scott Holtzman, Jeremy Stevens, Diego Ferreira, and Arman Sarukian. The most recent of those, the Sarukian fight, was at It was the headliner of UFC on ESPN 38. Odds on this one. I don't know whether Keith will be surprised. I was a little bit. Gamrot, almost a 2-1 favorite. Minus 190.
Are you kidding me?
Beneil Dariush plus 160 on the comeback.
Holy shit.
I told you offline in between segments that I was about to pick my third upset in a row. I mean, like, hit me with this fight. Tell me what you think about it.
Yeah,
tell me who you think wins and how.
It's a fantastic fight, but I don't think Beneil Dariush should be a 2-1 underdog against the guys in the main event. Like, Beneil Dariush is really freaking good. I mean, he's southpaw that is so well-rounded. On the feet, he's very aggressive, high output. He's really lately, like, come into this – like, he's come to this power, but it's also this mean streak. For, like, the nicest guy. The guy who's like, he's going to preach Jesus afterwards. Yeah. But, like, he has this mean streak in him. He wings that overhand left with power. He has these hard kicks to the body and to the head. He does have some defensive holes. He keeps his chin a little too high for my liking. He doesn't check leg kicks. He has been brutally knocked out 3 times, but it's been a while since now. He's a very physically strong guy. He likes to get in that clinch. He likes to grind on opponents. I mean, he battered Scott Holtzman with knees inside. He's such an we were talking about his grappling. His grappling's off the charts, but he's an underrated wrestler. He's a multi-time no-gi world champion in BJJ. He's definitely like a topside guy. Very Damian Maia style, where he's going to grind on you, but he has super slick back takes. I like that he doesn't rush the submission. He has 8 submission wins, and he's a gamer, man. Like, he wins this fight. Like, he could be fighting for the title next. Gamrot. I mean, this match is fantastic. I kind of wish this match was the main event of last week's card, because they deserve the. They don't deserve. Well, I mean, it being on such a massive pay-per-view, you get a lot of respect for that. I get that, but they also deserve to be the headliners of a card. Like, that's, you get all the attention.
Oh yeah, I mean, when I said, like, over half the fights on this card could be a fight night headliner, this is one of the ones that would be. Absolutely. Oh, dude, this is the best fight night headliner of, like, you know, the next 3 months.
Yeah. Like, this fight is incredible. Gamrot, he's really good. He's an elite athlete. Like that, his athleticism is great. He's a southpaw, very good everywhere. He's fast. He's got fast hands. He's technically sound. He's accurate. He likes that mid-range striking game with tight strikes down the pipe. I love that he cut angles when he attacks. I like that he switched stances in mid-attack. He's got some surprising power. He hurt Scott Holtzman. He hurt Armen Sarukian. He has taken a lot of damage. Like the Kutalazi fight, he took a lot of damage. The last fight against Sarukian, he took a lot of damage. But he's an amazing grappler himself. Great entries. He's so good at getting to that second level and getting, driving through, cutting the angles. Great at winning scrambles. Great top game. Look how he subbed Jeremy Stephens with ease. He likes leg locks, which I hate. But what I like about him, he uses them to create a scramble. And he's so good at scramble. Look at his last fight. Like, he was hitting Granby rolls. He couldn't be like Sarukian would take him down and he'd be Granby roll right out of it, just basically burning the energy of Sarukian from getting that takedown. He showed amazing cardio in that 5-round war. That's why he won. Was his cardio. It was really amazing. This is such a great fight. Like, I X's and O's, wow, this is as good as it gets in the entire card. I have flip-flopped, which is why I was so shocking that Dariush is such a massive. Like, I didn't expect that. I expected him to be a slight favorite. I am worried about Dariush's size advantage. I'm also worried about his power. But I guess I'm gonna go with the favorite. I wrote in my notes I'm gonna go with the underdog, but I guess I'm going with the favorite. I thought this was gonna be like a cool upset pick, like hot pick for me, but I guess not. I'm gonna go with Gamrot. I think he's the more technically sound striker. I think he's a better overall wrestler. I think he's more explosive. But I think we're gonna have some epic scrambles. I think this is gonna be a war. Give me Gamrot by decision.
Yeah, something about, I mean, Gamrot he's exceeded my expectations since coming to the UFC. Like, he came to the UFC, and I'm like, well, this will be fun while it lasts, because he was an exciting guy in KSW. But I was like, you know what? The last exciting champ who came over from KSW in the prime of their career is one of the biggest busts of any high-level signing, you know, in UFC history. In, of course, Ariane Lipski. And when he lost to Kutateladze, that didn't even bother me that much, because I was like, Kutateladze is a great prospect as well. Gamrot might stick around, and again, it'll be fun while it lasts. If he gets 10 fights in the UFC and picks up 6 or 7 post-fight bonuses, like I consider like that's a success. That's not what's happened. He has fought his way into title contention, and he's done it. Every single fight has been a banger. Like the Kutateladze fight was great, and all the ones since then have been better, even as he's moved up very logically through the levels of competition. I mean, it's almost like 4 clean stages. Scott Holtzman, kind of roster guy / marginal guy. Jeremy Stevens, like super tough veteran, but terrible style matchup.
Yeah,
like,
terrible.
Gamrot was a terrible matchup for Stevens.
Yeah.
Diego Ferreira, like former high-level contender, like clearly slipping, and then Sarukian, just another red-hot prospect, like
Stud.
right at his same level. And they gave us, I mean, you and I called it on the recap, this was one of the most fun fights with this much grappling in it that we could remember seeing ever.
Oh, yeah.
It was just so much fun. And
It's going to be the same way.
yeah, and I think we said afterwards, like, matchmaking-wise, anything. I mean, you say that about lightweight all the time. You're like, give me any 2 top 10 guys, it's going to be great. With Gamrot, it's like he's the anti some of the other people we've talked about on this card, because you stick Gamrot in there, you're guaranteed it's not going to be a boring fight. He's going to pull a fun fight out of anybody. You know, he showed elite athleticism in KSW and a surprisingly good gas tank for as big as he is and as much energy as he expends. That's something that, if anything was going to fall off when he came to the UFC, and USADA, it was going to be that. Again, Lipski. But it hasn't. And yeah, it's kind of remarkable, frankly. He's still just 31. He is, for 155, dead in his prime. You know, Dariush, I love that you bring up the size thing, because I was going to bring that up. Dariush is big in a way that his tail of the tape doesn't tell.
Yeah.
Like, unless he's fighting James Vick, he always seems like the bigger guy in the cage. He's on that 7-fight win streak I mentioned. He made people like Thiago Moises and Drew Dober look small. I mean, Diego Ferreira always looks short. Yeah. And Dober is like a short, thick guy. So is Diego Ferreira. Dariush dwarfed both of them. Then Tony Ferguson finally fighting a guy that's a little taller than him. He made Ferguson look skinny, and he absolutely bullied him. Like, Dariush is a big dude, and he's got, like, obviously he's an elite grappler, as you mentioned, and he's got the kind of grappling that is pretty efficient on his gas tank. Kind of the opposite of what we were saying about Sean Brady, where he just throws unnecessary calories into, like, big mat returns. That's not Dariush. He has that just veteran topside grappler thing. I mean, it's not pure apples to apples, but kind of a lightweight Glover Teixeira, like, where he is just a ton of bricks on top and wearing you out, and you feel like he could do that for an hour if he had to. Yeah,
that's a good comparison.
Dariush, underrated. Like, I don't know if it's underrated, because he has a lot of knockouts, but like, shocking power.
Yeah, you don't think of him as the big cracker in the division, but yeah, he knocks guys out.
You're always, and if you asked me 4 years ago, I would have said he's the guy that never makes it through to title contention because of his propensity for getting knocked out by much worse fighters at the worst times. Dude, I mean, I love Ramsey Nijem. Ramsey Nijem is, I mean, he's from Utah. You know, I saw him on the come up when he was like, 3-0. And he's a super, like, sweetheart of a dude. He's a fun guy to watch fight. But Ramsey Nijem, like, cold cocking Beneil Dariush, is one of the weirdest outcomes. And so is Alexander Hernandez. Like, and it was almost like the worst thing for. Like 42 seconds, and it was the worst thing for both guys because it derailed Dariush's like rise to title contention again. and it vaulted Alexander Hernandez into a level of matchups he was not ready for. Yeah. And so it kind of wrecked both their careers. Well, at least wrecked the next year or two of both their careers. Yeah, I think this is going to be a fantastic fight. As much as I was looking forward to the grappling in Gamrot's fight with Sarukian, I might even be looking forward to it more here. Because Dariush, I mean, he's not the same, like, just little muscular cannonball of a wrestler, but, you know, he's much bigger, has a deceptively good takedown game for a guy who doesn't come across as a plus athlete. I mean, he comes across just kind of slow, and he almost seems like, I mean, it's not true. I'm not saying this is true, but he looks like he's not trying very hard. Like, he just looks so relaxed, and all of his moves are so relaxed. It just almost seems like he's a black belt, like going at 60% speed with, like, you know, a blue belt in, you know, on open mat night.
Yeah. He's a guy that he goes to media day. Like, they do one of those press conferences. No one's asking him a question. Or if they do, the question's like, hey, you're in the division top rank. Who do you think wins the main event? Like, you know?
It was super funny that last card down here in Houston, 262, because it was him versus Ferguson. And this is once Ferguson had really leveled up into being just like this kind of outrageous soundbite. And, you know, they're both at the table. I'm at all the pressers. And, you know, they would keep going to Dariush for responses to the outrageous stuff that Ferguson was saying. And he's like, why are you so mad, man? Like, you know, we're here, we're getting paid to have a good time. Like, you know, once the cage door closed, he abused Ferguson again. Like
he's a savage.
I mean, the outcomes were all different, but he beat Ferguson worse than DeBronx or Chandler did. Like, Chandler lost the first round to Ferguson and then, like, knocked him out. Dariush just destroyed Ferguson. Yeah. I'm going with Dariush on this one, man. Like, I don't think either guy's going to get a finish here. I mean, if someone gets a finish, it's going to be Gamrot just blasting Dariush and catching him with his hands down. Which,
I think I can go either way. I think I can see Dariush starching him right back.
I mean, he certainly could. Like, the other thing about Dariush's 7-fight win streak is that, like, I think 5 of the 7 were finishes. So, he cold-cocked Drakkar Klose, just iced him. He iced Scott Holtzman with the spinning back fist. Poor Holtzman has fought both of these dudes. Come on, give the guy a break. I mean, Dariush certainly could. Like, see, even me, right after saying his power is underrated, I go and underrate his power. But if I'm envisioning how this fight plays out, they both have their moments on the feet, but Gamrot's moments are scarier to Dariush, and it goes to the ground. Dariush forces it to the ground. Gamrot is more than happy to oblige him because Gamrot is so confident right now, and he's like, yeah, I want to, like, beat this 4-time Nogi world champion on the ground. I want to steal his thunder, because right now, Dariush, coming off the Ferguson fight, he was in the title discussion. Gamrot is going to want to steal that thunder. He immediately mints himself as, I mean, if he beats Dariush convincingly, he might not be the next title shot, but a title shot might be his next fight. You know? Yeah, like that little mosh pit of 4 at the top of the division is getting close to working itself out. Oliveira's beaten everybody but Mokaev at this point.
Yeah.
Give me Dariush by decision. Wouldn't be shocked if we got a finish. I'd be shocked if we got a submission. Let me say that. I would be shocked if one of these guys tapped the other out. And if they do, it's probably because they hurt the other badly on the feet and then took them out while they were compromised. But I could see a knockout. But give me Dariush by decision. This one should be absolutely sensational. And if I had to guess, Beneil Dariush wins by decision, and he's the one having to hang on towards the end.
Yeah, let me ask you this question real quick before we move on. So if somehow Dariush ended up you matched Dariush in the main event against the 2 guys in the main event, would you be? I wouldn't pick him to win over either guy, but would you be shocked if he won?
No. Third from the top at UFC 280, and built as a clear source of backup fighters / opportunity for self-matchmaking with the co-main event, is a bantamweight matchup between former champ Petrosyan and rising, I mean, can't even call him prospect anymore, rising red-hot contender Sean O'Malley. Yan, the 29-year-old Siberian, is 16-3 overall. He is 8-2 since joining the UFC as a former ACB, now ACA, bantamweight champ. He is the former UFC interim bantamweight champ. He's the former UFC undisputed bantamweight champ. He is coming off a loss in his last fight and has, in fact, lost 2 of his last 3. Those, of course, being his pair of fights with current champ Aljamain Sterling. He lost a controversial fight via disqualification in the 4th round for an illegal knee to the head of the grounded Sterling. That was last March at UFC 259. He came back from that with a unanimous decision win over Corey Sandhagen last October at UFC 267. That got the rematch with Sterling set up. There would have been an immediate rematch. He went and fought Sandhagen because Sterling was sidelined with neck surgery for over a year. Once Sterling was finally good to go, they got together at UFC 273 this April, where Sterling defeated Jan by split decision. Jan still very much a factor in the title picture, still angling to do what he needs to do in order to get a 3rd fight with Sterling or whoever the champ is standing in his way. Or perhaps, if you asked O'Malley, Jan would be the one standing in the way. Sean O'Malley, the 27-year-old Montana native by way of Arizona, is 15-1 with 1 no contest overall. He is 7-1 with 1 no contest since joining the UFC as definitely the signature star of the first season of Dana White's Contender Series and arguably the most accomplished fighter, like right alongside Jeff Neal. He had that no contest his last outing. It was a fight against Pedro Munoz at UFC 276 in July, where he poked Munoz in the eye middle of the 2nd round. Munoz unable to continue. We had the no contest. That kind of was a bump in the road after a 3-fight winning streak for him, those being knockouts of Thomas Almeida, Chris Moutinho, and Raulian Paiva over the course of the last 18 months. Those 3 fights were him bouncing back from his first career loss. A first-round TKO loss to Marlon Vera all the way back in August of 2020, where O'Malley hurt his ankle early in the fight, ended up on the ground. Vera pounded him out from mount. O'Malley looking to make his last stop, perhaps, before a title shot himself. The no contest in the Munoz fight was basically him failing up as he went from a plummeting former contender to a probably number 2 guy in the division in Jan. He is an underdog, and he is a substantial underdog. Jan is minus 300, O'Malley plus 250. Keith, the people who are legions of listeners on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, can't see the look on your face.
Yeah.
But I know that when Keith pulls a particular face at the odds, I should definitely hand it to him first.
I can't believe these odds.
And just for the record, when I grab these odds, I usually go to fightodds.io, and I will just take a median of the reputable sites, because they list like 12 sites on there, and some of them aren't available in the US. It doesn't make sense to quote odds that 85% of our listeners can't even get. And then there are some that are a little more fly by night, where they'll offer a really attractive line, but you go there to actually try and bet, and they'll cap you at a ridiculously low number because they don't really want to offer those odds. So I look at 5 Dimes, DraftKings, BetUS, and kind of get a median of those. There are a few wider lines, there are a few narrower lines, but a minus 300 plus 250 that's pretty much what you're getting.
Yeah.
Talk to me about this and why everybody is sleeping on Sean O'Malley.
Yeah.
The last thing anybody has ever called Sean O'Malley within the last 3 years is overlooked or underrated or disrespected, but all of a sudden he's a 3-1 underdog.
Yeah. And I think he's got a really good chance of winning. I think both guys are really amazing fighters, especially in the striking department. I'll start with the former champ, Jan. I mean, he's an amazing fighter, and this is where I give O'Malley a better chance of probably, obviously, the betting lines do. One, the size advantage. The length of Sean O'Malley is an issue. And Jan is a shorter guy for the division. But also, Yada is his own worst enemy. He can cruise a little too much. He's too calm. He needs to pick up his output. He's a boxer who fights like he has 12 rounds. So he's studying his foe. He's picking.
That is so good. Thank you. Like that's now gonna be my go-to line.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's studying his foe. I mean, there's some of the all-time greatest fighters. Adesanya does it. Anderson Silva does it. John Jones does it. So like, add him to the list. Like, that's good. But this is a 3-round fight. He's picking up the tails. He's a little bit of a slow start. He's given away rounds in the past. He did it against Jose Aldo. He almost lost the fight to Jimmy Rivera, where he landed strikes and he would steal the round back by landing one big shot in a round that he was losing the whole time. Corey Sandhagen, he was giving away rounds. But that said, don't think I'm dissing his striking. He's one of the best boxers in the entire UFC. I mean, he has 250 boxing matches. When he lets his hands go, there is Chris as anybody. He probably has the fastest hands in the UFC. He can fight out of both stances. He pressures forward, and he sets traps. And he's a builder. He's a guy who builds over time. But again, that really worries me. Being this is only a 3-round fight. He's really good. This is probably the most impressive thing. He throws the spots. He throws to where his opponent's going to go, not where he is. And that's really impressive. A perfect example of this is the high kick that Marlon Vera threw on Dominic Cruz. He threw it to a spot that Dominic Cruz would dip into his escapes. He's very quick reflex, really nice snap on his shots. He's got plus power. He's not a one-punch knockout kind of guy. I love his straight left though. He does a slip uppercut, which very few guys do. He's very hard to hit, but he does a turtle shell, which is a very boxing cover up, which leaves him open to kicks to the body, kicks to the legs, and just shoot entries on. He can wrestle. He likes to catch kicks and then do this foot sweep to get the fight to the ground. He also can shoot entries, or he likes to just close the distance, get some body locks, foot sweeps inside there. Really good at winning scrambles, but the fights that he's lost, he was taken down. Magomedov took him down in a fight that I actually still don't. Petrosyan won that fight, and Aljamain Sterling in the second fight. And again, that's another one that a lot of people. I don't remember who he scored it for, but it was really, really close. So that's a little concerning. For a guy who's really good at winning scrambles, that turtle style leaves openings for takedowns. I don't think that's going to be O'Malley, but O'Malley is such a great athlete. He's long and he's lengthy. He can fight at both stances. He's very quick twitch, accurate. He's a definition of fluid. He just flows. Extremely accurate. He's good at beating his opponent to the punch. He's also really good at picking up his opponent's timing and rhythm, which is going to be extremely hard against Petrosyan because he doesn't fight that way. He doesn't fight a lot. Like we talked about last week, Alexa Grasso and Vivian Araujo was in a very rhythm. Petrosyan doesn't fight that way, so that's going to be a big adjustment O'Malley's going to have to do. He also though cruises at times. He likes to lay traps. We saw it against Pedro Munoz, where he didn't really have output. Even though he was getting his legs kicked out by Marlon Vera, he was trying to lay traps to land the perfect shot. And he can get too uncomfortable and not match volume. But when he lets his weapons fly, I mean, he's got an elite jab. He's got tons of variety. I love the way he hides his right hand behind things. He'll kind of getting your attention with a lead left hand and then just this piston that comes forward with the right hand. He's good at slipping and then leave himself right in range to land good shots. He does pull his head straight back though, which is surprising. He keeps his hands low and that helps him slip a little bit, but he's got really good sting. I mean, he doesn't look like a guy that would have power based on his frame, but because he's so accurate and he has whip in his shots, he's one of the biggest crackers in the division. He sets up his spinning attacks really well. He doesn't check leg kick, which is a major issue. We've seen it in 2 fights. We saw it huge against Marlon Vera. Obviously, that's how he lost. And then we saw it a little bit against Pedro Munoz in the last fight. He did, to his credit, he was checking some leg kicks against Pedro Munoz, but it was still that's the avenue where a lot of guys are going to go. We've never seen his grappling. It's kind of a little bit of that Shogun Hua mystique where they say his, is supposedly off the charts and all this. But he's been taken down. But he hasn't been taken down. He hasn't gone against a really powerful wrestler, even a powerful, just a wrestler, Ricky Simone or, Marab. Yeah, like that would be even like Frankie Edgar. I'd really see what he would do against someone like that. But what I do like, he did show his cardio against Chris Moutinho, where was a couple question marks about his cardio in the past. I think that was answered with his output. I am shocked. I've seen a lot of people talking about this fight, and it seemed like everybody's picking Petrosyan. Seeming like this is a slam dunk for him, and it could be, really could be. If there's a blowout one way or the other, then I think it's Jan blowing out O'Malley. But being that it's a 3-round fight, I really think that helps O'Malley because he only has to win 2 rounds. And if Jan comes out too relaxed and O'Malley picks up that pace, or if Jan just stays on the outside trying to set traps and just lets O'Malley like kick from the outside. He gets a little bit of a Manon Farrow feel with him where he's like, oh, he's not really hitting me, so he's not like thinking he's losing. O'Malley could make some rounds. That said, O'Malley over dips a little bit, and I can see Jan setting up a shot and setting up some timing on those dips where he starts picking up, okay, he's rolling this way, he's escaping that way, and then he starts throwing to those shots. And I also imagine, for some reason, when I thought about this fight, I just keep imagining Jan catching those kicks and doing that little inside dump he likes to do. If you know what I'm talking about, he like catches the kick and then kind of like pushes it back, and then using a top wrestling game. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of wrestling. So I am going with the odds. I'm going with the favorite. I'm taking Jan by decision, but I am nowhere near a 3-1. I love Jan too, which is funny because like I'm a shill for Jan, but I'm also shill for O'Malley. Like I think O'Malley's really good. He's concerned me a little bit lately, but he's still really young, man. He's at the was it 27?
Yep.
Like he's just starting to make his he's at the age where you could see a huge jump in his skill set, but also his power. So. If I'm betting, I'm just passing on this fight altogether. So give me Jan in a closer decision than people think.
Yeah, I can feel a lot of, kind of what you put down there. It's tough to predict how O'Malley's going to do against this level of competition because things have kind of conspired to slow roll him. Like the UFC is exactly the kind of promotion that would have brought him along way too quickly. I mean, he won his first 3 fights against 2 kind of sub-level guys in Sukumtat and Quinones, then fought Eddie Wineland, and that was perfect because Eddie Wineland is a recognizable name. He's a guy from way back in the former WEC champ, but like definitely on the downslope of his career and just perfectly built for O'Malley to get a highlight reel finish against. I mean, you couldn't have gotten a more favorable matchup, with similar name value than Eddie Wineland for O'Malley. Just, kind of a slow, like a guy who even in his prime was kind of hittable and grindy and was now like in the tail end of his career. So O'Malley did the expected. Next fight was against Marlon Vera, and he had that weird loss where, he got injured early and Vera took full advantage. Marlon Vera fought Jose Aldo in his next fight. If O'Malley wins that fight and he's fighting Jose Aldo in his next fight, he's either champ right now or his hype train is already gone. I mean, we're talking about a little over 2 years ago. That would have been a tall order early for a guy that was like 24 at the time. Then he wins 3 more, and again, they take him right back to sub-level competition. Thomas Almeida on a 3-fight losing streak. I think they were all even like knockouts. I know Moutinho was a short notice sign up, but they signed Moutinho rather than book it against like Brian Kelleher or any of the other like good 135ers that were sticking their hands in the air frantically, to step up on short notice. They signed the 3rd best like bantamweight in CES. Like they didn't even get the best guy in CES. And then Raulian Paiva, who's I think like, 3-5 in the UFC right now. So he gets to Pedro Munoz. Again, it's as favorable a matchup as you can get with that level of name value and ranking, because it's a guy that's still kind of borderline top 10 and has been higher in the rankings, but was on a miserable skid. And then we get the no contest. Every time, the UFC builds a head of steam behind O'Malley, something happens out of his control. Well, I mean, the eye poke isn't completely out of his control, but you know what I mean. Something happens other than just like a straight uncontroversial loss to force him to slow roll him again. What that means is he's looked dazzling in his fights, but dude, what's his best win? Like, what is O'Malley's best win? Howley and Paiva? You're muted, but I looked like you agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's Howley and Paiva, a guy that's not scaring the top 15, top 20, top 25. Like, he's a guy that seems to be on his way out of the UFC.
Yeah,
to step from that and one round of action against Pedro Munoz to Petrosyan is like, that is as big a bicycle merging into freeway traffic moments as I can think of, like in recent UFC history. Whereas Petrosyan has been fighting nothing but the best fighters in the world over that same amount of time.
Yeah.
I know that, like, I mean, Jan, he is short and compact. Like, not only is he physically short, but he doesn't have long arms, and his boxing style, it doesn't like make his reach seem any longer than it is. Like, he throws straight punches, but just he generally is very compact.
Yeah.
But I worry about that every time. And you know what? Corey Sandhagen is almost he's almost exact same size as Sean O'Malley. And while he's not as magical a striker, he's a very good striker who uses his length well. And Jan didn't have much trouble with him. Aljamain Sterling is a long guy that, I mean, he's more of a kicker than a boxer. But the reason he lost to Sterling both times was not because he was outsized on the feet. So I'm interested to see how it looks. In O'Malley's case, I think if O'Malley loses, it's going to be a frustrating loss because he's going to get super gun shy once he realizes how fast Jan is and how hard he hits.
Yeah.
I think O'Malley could win a first round where Jan is just really, really taking it slow. Jan stings him hard early in the second round and the fight's over. Like, he's not knocked out. He's not even hurt that bad, but O'Malley struggles to pull the trigger for the rest of the fight. Yeah, and if Jan takes him down in the first or second round as well, that's only going to contribute. That's what I expect. Like, I don't think either guy is just going to steamroll the other. I'm not predicting a finish here, even though both these guys have knockout power. O'Malley has one-shot knockout power, and Jan has the ability to really pile damage up on people. I'm not expecting that. I am expecting this to go to decision, and I think it'll be a learning moment for O'Malley and kind of send him back to the drawing board. And it'll be one where he watches the tape and he goes, I could have beat this guy. I know what I need to fix. And for as outrageous as he is, like in his pronouncements and outside of the cage things, he's a smart student of the game type fighter, very much like Conor McGregor was on his way up, very much like Israel Adesanya. So give me Jan to win a decision here. And for it not to hurt O'Malley's like star value much at all, it'll end up being a little too much too soon. And if it's in O'Malley's stars to be UFC champ one day, this isn't even going to be a bump in the road to it. Like, well, after discussing a dozen fights full of no-name fighters and not very interesting prospects, and just kind of junk, junk for the hardcores. We finally get to the good stuff. That's a joke. If you skipped to this timestamp, that's a joke. It is a bantamweight title fight between Aljamain Sterling and former champ TJ Dillashaw. Sterling, the champ, 33 years old, fighting out of Cortland, New York. He is 21-3 overall. He is 13-3 in the UFC. He has won 7 straight fights since his shocking knockout loss to Marlon Moraes almost 5 years ago. Those wins: Brett Johns, Cody Stamen, Jimmy Rivera, Pedro Munoz, Corey Sandhagen, and then his back-to-back pair of fights with Jan. The first of which, of course, he won via disqualification. came back after his injury layoff a year later and beat Jan by split decision in the rematch. He will be defending against Dillashaw. The 36-year-old Californian is 17-4 overall. He is 13-4 since joining the UFC as not the winner of the 14th season of The Ultimate Fighter. That still goes down as John Dodson's greatest career achievement. But since joining as a veteran of Tough 14, he's 13-4 in the UFC. He is, of course, the two-time former UFC bantamweight champ who was out of commission for 2 years. He succeeded in dropping to flyweight, attempted to become a two-division champ by fighting Henry Cejudo for the belt that had been vacated by Demetrius Johnson. That was one of the more disastrous moves in the history of high-level mixed martial arts, as he lost to Cejudo via knockout in just 32 seconds, then tested positive for EPO, banned performance enhancer, relinquished his bantamweight title, and went from a fighter who was in the discussion for the top pound-for-pound fighter in the sport to one of the most disgraced former champs in recent memory. He came back from that suspension, took a split decision over Corey Sandhagen in the main event of UFC on ESPN 27 last July. The win over a high-level contender was enough to prove that he was back in good enough competitive shape to be in the title picture. And after a year and change of waiting and a few changes here and there, he is fighting for the title. He is not favored to win it back. Sterling minus 185 as the favorite. Dillashaw plus 150 on the comeback. I kind of get, why he's the underdog here. And I think he should be the underdog. Dillashaw in 2018, after his two fights with Garbrandt, just, his two dominant wins over Garbrandt as he prepared to drop in weight and fight Cejudo. I didn't have him as my top pound-for-pound fighter in the sport, but if you ask me who in the world is fighting best right now, I might have said Dillashaw. He looked absolutely amazing, and then all the wheels fell off the wagon. I mean, he came back, and obviously, anytime you have 2 years away from the sport, especially if you're in your 30s in a lighter weight class, there are going to be questions floating around you. And especially if you're gone for 2 years because of a PED bust. It's like, well, how are you going to look when you can't be on that anymore? And there are tons of performance enhancers. Plenty of fighters get busted for, either steroids or masking agents for steroids. He got busted for EPO. EPO is it's the official vegetable of the Tour de France. It is, something that stimulates red blood cell growth. It helps your wind. It helps your cardio, allowing fighters to, obviously go further into fights, but also make greater gains in training. And when you juxtapose that on top of what kind of fighter he was at his best, it's concerning to think what happens when you take that away as just this. He was this perpetual motion machine, like extremely fast, who had elite level wrestling late into fights, was like the better conditioned athlete in basically all of his fights. You're like, oh, and you can't have that anymore? Oof. Came back, and I mean, he beat Corey Sandhagen, and it was a split decision, but I scored it for Dillashaw. And like I say, that was enough to show that there's enough left of TJ Dillashaw to, to qualify for like jumping right back into the title picture, but he's now 36. This is a division that doesn't tend to be kind to people over about 33 or 34 under the best of circumstances. And he's a guy with, he had a lot of tread off the tires already at the time of the Cejudo fight. Like, even if he hadn't been suspended, say he just lost to Cejudo and said, okay, I guess I need to just stick in my lane. I'm going to stay at 135 and keep defending my belt. I would expect him to have lost to somebody by now anyway. I would expect him to be on the downslope, and maybe still a top 10 fighter, but not the champ anymore, even so. And for that reason, I understand why he's an underdog to the current champ. In 2018, I would have favored him over Sterling all day because Aljamain Sterling is a great wrestler and great grappler. TJ Dillashaw was a great wrestler, and a great MMA grappler, but in a way that like their wrestling would meet in ways that unless somebody finished the other or really, really did a ton of damage, would win rounds for Dillashaw. I think Dillashaw would have found it easier to get takedowns on Sterling, and Sterling would have had to initiate scrambles, try to sweep the top position or escape. On the feet, I think, again, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, like around the time of the Garbrandt fights for Dillashaw, around the time of Sterling getting iced by Marlon Moraes, like I would have favored Dillashaw's striking over Sterling's, because Sterling at that time, like his punching had really not come along. He was mostly a long kicker. I think Dillashaw would have eaten him up on the feet. I don't believe any of those things anymore. Like, I think TJ Dillashaw still has the physical tools and the skills to be a top 10 bantamweight, but I don't expect him to threaten to win a title again. And I think Saturday is when we find out. I think he has slowed down a bit. And, Sterling, his striking has never been about being blindingly fast. But, like Dillashaw's has been, and I don't think he is anymore. Dillashaw's wrestling, was always about fast entries, like, fast single leg, fast double leg, things that he timed in between, his striking, like a modified version of, what Dominic Cruz always did. Dominic Cruz would do his like little bounce from side to side and then just throw in a knee tap. Like Dillashaw was much more likely to shoot an actual single or double, but a similar kind of thing. I don't think that's going to work on Sterling. I expect Sterling to be bigger and stronger if they go to the ground. Like Sterling, again, he's a very good wrestler. He's a very, very good submission grappler. But I think if he wants to keep things on the feet, he can probably just fight off Dillashaw's takedowns, and I think he might be able to take Dillashaw down. So, I favor Sterling here, and I say he's gonna win this thing, and he's gonna win in a way that kind of closes the door on Dillashaw as a future title contender, because I think Sterling's gonna win going away, like where Dillashaw's best moments are gonna be in the first 3 rounds, and instead of like Dillashaw pulling forward in the later rounds when we get there, like I think it's gonna be Sterling taking over in rounds 4 and 5. Give me Sterling by decision. And yeah, like 2 fighters looking for a measure of redemption. One's going to get it.
Yeah, this is an intriguing fight. I feel much better about Dillashaw's chances after seeing fight Corey Sandhagen than if he just went like first fight back, got thrown right in there. Another concern I have about him is he did have knee surgery after that. Like he had, I know they said it was minor, it wasn't anything more like, I think it was like cleaning stuff up, wasn't that big of a deal, but still it's you mentioned 36, but it's funny because Aljamain Sterling's a little older than I thought he was. He's 33. Like he's done some spring chicken himself. And one thing I think of, like I always think of TJ Dillashaw being shorter for the division and Sterling being taller. Then I looked and Sterling's only 1 inch taller than TJ Dillashaw, and he only has a 4-inch reach, which it's
when he's got the high top fade, it's like 6 inches taller.
Yeah, you got the kid and play look.
Yeah.
This is a really fun, intriguing matchup. I think it's the best matchup to make, even though I could see the argument like it might not be the most might not be the toughest test, but name value wise, I think it is. And I'm just really surprised.
I mean, just real quick, if I may. I just gave a pretty lengthy rant on how I don't think TJ Dillashaw is championship quality anymore, but that's why you make this fight now before it becomes obvious against someone else. Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you like get it done while you still have the chance. this card is so unbelievably stacked, and that's a great thing. But the thing that's gonna just fallen underneath the radar is this redemption story from TJ Dillashaw. He's a guy. What I'll give about this is he didn't make up some lie. He didn't make up it was something in a supplement that I didn't realize it took. Like, he came out and said, yeah, I cheated. Like, I was taking this. Like, there's something about coming forward and admitting that you're a human and you make mistakes and you try to get an edge to better your life, to better your family, to be more successful. You become super vulnerable. That, to me, it's so funny that how many people turned away from him. He almost brought me into him more, being that he didn't do the route that so many other people have taken.
Almost every other fighter that's been.
Yeah, pretty much everybody. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying we should look at him as a great dude for doing it. Like, I'm not saying like he should be praised for taking EPO and then, admitting it. I'm not saying that either. So take it what it's worth. Aljamain Sterling, even as a champion, is criminally underrated. Just still doesn't get his respect. After, the first fight with Jan, he gets so much hate and then wins another one. Really close fight, but wins it. Still doesn't get the respect. He's a high output striker who just touches. Like, he doesn't waste his energy, just kind of touches. Very unorthodox in his style. He lands at weird angles. But he can do it for 25 minutes. He moves well. He's pretty elusive. He can fight at both stances. He hits harder than you think, and that's because of his head movement. He kind of darts off. He likes to dart to one side, throw a high kick on the same side. He's good at range. Teep kicks are kind of like his go-to. He was crushing Pedro Munoz in their fight to the body with teep kicks. You mentioned like just being a kicker. He's just a great kicking game altogether. Like, he goes down to the calf kicks. He'll do like quick switch kick to the head, but he doesn't have much power. He's not going to really hurt you with the hands that much, but he's a very opportunistic wrestler. Like, he isn't explosive, but he has this like innate ability to time his entries. It's very similar to what like George St. Pierre was. Like, George St. Pierre would never the most fundamentally sound wrestler. He just know how to time it, and Sterling's the same way. He will dive in for takedowns, and he uses those long lengths to close the distance, similar to like a Michael Chiesa, but he's relentless to get the fight to the ground. He uses those long legs so well, and when he gets you down, he has this great ability to get right to your back, and he like backpacks as good as anybody in the sport. He's a real submission threat. He had that amazing Sulov stretch, and he's got the cardio to go hard. He has been hurt in the past, like to the body. You go back to the Pedro Munoz fight, he was hurt. And then obviously he was knocked dead by Marlon Moraes a long time ago. Those are concerning. But overall, he's hot. I think I was more, a lot of people scored the fight for Corey Sandhagen. It was so close. It really, I looked at MMA decisions and it was like 16-5 or something, like 16-6, something like that in favor of Sandhagen. And I think some of that has to do with people hating on Dillashaw. They didn't want him to win.
That's entirely possible.
Yeah, there's a human element. I gave it to Dillashaw. I thought he won, but it's okay. I'm like, okay with Sandhagen. It was extremely close. Yeah. That said, I thought he looked like himself. Like, I wasn't disappointed in what I saw. He had amazing output still. You look at just the total numbers of strikes landed. It was up there like he always did. Great footwork. He was constantly darting in and out of range. Now, again, I'm worried how that's going to be after the knee surgery and being 36. You naturally kind of lose a step a little bit. What I love is he's never attacking the same way. That's why like he's kind of always getting you guessing, kind of getting you reacting. And I wonder if Sterling would kick as much, being that Dillashaw is a more offensive wrestler that he's faced in a really long time. Dillashaw always had really good vision. He does lead with his chin a little bit, which is surprising. He doesn't get hit, but it's so hard to crack because one, he comes at you unconventional, but he changes up rhythm. He changed up his rhythm and the pace of his attacks, so it's hard to time it. He's got some quick hands. Everything's kind of short and tight. I think he's got underrated power. He mixes kicks to the body well, and he kind of mixes them in combos. And he also likes that Robert Whitaker dip into one side, high kick on the other side. He is open to get tagged with a kick or an uppercut or knee because of that. He dips so much. I'd say he's a smart wrestler. He's got good entries, good top control. Dominic Cruz did take him down a lot in their fight. That was such a long time ago, so I don't know why that's still on my notes, but it is. But he has really good get-up game. And this is a much tougher fight. Like you're counting Dillashaw out. You seem like you're kind of starting his, writing his obituary a little bit. I flip-flopped on this one. And it's funny you read the odds and I go, oh yeah, this one makes sense. Like it's and which is surprising that it wasn't. I thought Sterling would be a bigger favorite, but this is where I'd probably set the odds. That said, I think I think this is a coin toss. I think Dillashaw is a gamer. I think both guys have moments. I think both guys are going to win rounds. I think Dillashaw might have a speed advantage, even though he's older. But he's going to have to get back that kicking range. I think a big thing that's going to matter is who initiates the wrestling. I think wrestling needs to be part of the victor's wrestling game is going to be huge. But I think it's going to be who initiates the wrestling. I expect Sterling to initiate the wrestling more, and I really think Dillashaw can't fall in love with his hands. He's going to want to have to use his hands to set up some of his own takedowns. Put Sterling, who's a topside grappler, put him on his back, and vice versa. Sterling put a guy like Dillashaw, who's a topside grappler, on his back. I think this fight might look a lot like both of theirs last fight, where we're debating the winner, where you go to MMA decisions and you got, our website, we usually have 4 or 5 guys scoring and MMA Junkie and ESPN and all these things throwing their scores out there. And I think it might be scattered all over the place. And one of these ones where some people are going to call robberies and it wasn't a robbery. You know what? I don't do intangibles. I never really do. But sometimes, every moment, you just kind of have to go with a gut feeling. And I'm going to do it with this one. I think we're going to have that story. I think we're going to have that story that not many people thought would be written. And I think we're going to go in new. I'm going to see Dillashaw wins it for the 3rd time. Give me Dillashaw by split decision.
Well, if Dillashaw wins, there are a number of conversations we're having on Saturday night.
Well, whatever if he does.
No? It's gonna be a packed recap anyway. But if Dillashaw wins, we're not talking about next matchups. We're talking about where does Dillashaw fit among the top pound for pound fighters of all time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have no personal animus towards the guy.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah.
For one thing, I'm one of those weirdos. I don't especially care about most performance enhancing drugs.
I don't either. I couldn't care less.
I think both fighters should have to pass the same test. If they pass the test, I don't care what they're using to basket. But within modest limits, I did think it was admirable that he came so clean. But on the other hand, something you have to inject it into yourself, you can't accidentally do that. Oh, I slipped and fell onto a needle.
Oh,
it's not. But so I have no personal animus towards the guy. I looked back and I actually did score the Sandhagen fight for Sandhagen, but rounds 3 and 4 were the swing rounds. And we talked about it. I was like, I'm not mad. There's no robbery here. Whoever you, those were the rounds that we must have disagreed on. So if Dillashaw wins, that's a great story. If Sterling just crushes Dillashaw like a bug and gets himself finally a measure of legitimacy as a champ, that makes me feel good too.
Yeah.
So, if Dillashaw wins, we're all just sitting and holding our breath for about 4 weeks to make sure we
Well, the reason why I think steroids isn't a big thing for me is, I don't want to see anybody doing any kind of performance enhancing drugs. I just am not naive, to think that the guys who got caught are dirty and there's guys who haven't been caught that are clean like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I think a lot of fighters use performance enhancing drugs. and it's hard for me to judge someone that feels like they need to do it just to keep up. So
Barry Bonds got the home run record with taking steroids or performance hint drugs, whatever you want to say. Yeah.
He was a Hall of Famer before he started doing that.
But what I was going to say is all these people, especially just Yankee fans, are like, "Oh, Aaron Judge, new home run king. He did it clean." Like, yeah, sure he did.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Like.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, he's 6'7". Like, clearly he was taking something when he was a child. Like,
yeah. Fernando Tatis is magically the only star player who's been caught in 10 years. Like, yeah, sure.
Like, there were clearly some tainted Flintstone vitamins in the Judge household.
Yeah. No, I just feel like I'm not accusing him of taking steroids. No. I'm like Nate Diaz. They're all on steroids.
That brings us to the main event of UFC 280. A fight for the vacant lightweight title, vacated by one of the men who is about to fight for it. It is, of course, Charles "The Bronx" Oliveira versus Islam Mokaev. Oliveira, the 32-year-old Brazilian, is 33-8 with 1 no contest overall. He is 21-8 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He has won 11 straight fights since his second round TKO loss to Paul Felder almost 5 years ago. The wins on that stretch: Clay Guida, Christos Yagos, Jim Miller, David Tamer, Nick Lentz, Jared Gordon, Kevin Lee, Tony Ferguson, Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier, and Justin Gaethje, whom he beat in the main event of UFC 274 back in May. That was set to be his title defense. It was, of course, a title fight only for Gaethje when Oliveira controversially missed the championship weight cutoff by half a pound. He won nonetheless, a dominant 1-round performance. And UFC President Dana White assured us in the immediate aftermath of that Oliveira would be one of the ones to fight for his own vacated title. True to his word, here he is fighting for it 5 months later. Across the octagon from him is the next best thing to the Khabib Nurmagomedov matchup that we never got, or at least never got yet, as it is one of his top teammates / proteges, Mokaev. The 31-year-old Dagestani is 22-1 overall. He is 11-1 in the UFC. He has a 10-fight win streak to hold up to Oliveira's 11. Chris Wade, Nick Lentz, Gleison Tebow, Cajun Johnson, Armen Sarukian, Davi Ramos, Drew Dober, Thiago Moises, Dan Hooker, and Bobby Green. The most recent of those, the Green fight, was in the makeshift main event of UFC Fight Night 202 back in February, where Green stepped up on short notice for the matchup that nobody wanted. But Green, being Green and being a self-described gangster and also kind of riding his own biggest career high at the moment, stepped in, got knocked out or pounded out on the ground in the first round, no more or less than anyone expected. And that brings Mokaev to this Saturday. The odds do favor the challenger. Mokaev minus 190, Oliveira plus 155. Keith, this is the one we've all been waiting for. I gave a long preamble. Let's just jump right in. Who you got and how?
Dude, this fight is dope. I just want to take that for a second. Like, this is one of these main events that I am as excited for this one. I was like, while we were talking a little, I was taking right just a little list, just real quick off the top of my head, of just like main events that I was this excited for, like of recent memory. Like Adesanya Whitaker 1. I was extremely excited for that one. Usman Covington 1. I wrote down DC Jones 2 was one I was really excited about. Poirier McGregor 2 was another one. This one is right up there. But the thing that stood out to me, and this wasn't planned, I was just kind of writing it down. All those other ones is like the backstory, the trash talk, the Jones. I mean, think about the intro of John Jones DC 2, where you had the John Jones. I want my life back. Think about Poirier. I mean, Conor McGregor sells anything for himself. Usman and being on Candace Owens and I'm sorry, Covington being on Candace Owens and trash talk with Usman, and almost fighting backstage, and not these guys. It's one guy doesn't speak English. The other one does speak English, but doesn't talk that often. This is simply about the actual action in the cage, which is to get me that excited. That just speaks of like how good these two guys are. One thing I'll say, I'm shocked. Like I've seen a lot of people, and again, I don't really care about their opinion. Like I look at the film and that's how I make my opinion. But I'm surprised at how many people are very confident one way or the other. Like I've seen a lot of people be like, "Oh my God, Charles Oliveira is so disrespected. He's better than Khabib. He's going to teach Mokaev a lesson. Mokaev hasn't faced anybody. Imagine going from Bobby Green to Charles Oliveira, which is a really good point, by the way. Dan Hooker, Bobby Green, all the way to Charles Oliveira. Really, really good point. But have you watched Mokaev? How could you be confident picking against him? And then to flip it, the ones who go, "Oh yeah, that jiu-jitsu is not going to work against Sambo. He's a more well-rounded Khabib and all this. Like, how's that going to work for Charles Oliveira?" And I'm like, have you not seen Charles Oliveira get counted out like 7 fights in a row or something? I just surprised anybody is extremely confident, not giving the other side a chance. So that's just mind-boggling. But Charles Oliveira is amazing. What has changed in him is you just see him just oozing with confidence. You can see it every fight that comes out. And you can even see it in the build of the fight. The guy's walking around with a freaking lion, not a little baby lion. He's walking around with a freaking, 800-pound lion. Like, I keep watching these videos of him. I'm like, I'm scared. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? If that thing just turns around and bites you, bite your leg off in one bite, Did you watch the magician that almost get killed? Like, what's the matter with you? And then I'm like, oh, I know what's the matter with you. That lion's probably more scared of Charles Oliveira because Charles Oliveira probably freaking triangle choked that thing, But Charles Oliveira, he's so well-rounded. He doesn't get enough credit for like his athleticism. He doesn't get enough credit for how technically sound he is. He's so aggressive. He's willing to eat a shot to land a shot, and that's because he just hits hard. He's got long, rangy strikes. He has such underrated power. He's hurting everybody he's fighting with, like massacres on these guys. He's so accurate. He's a Muay Thai striker that works behind a great jab. His straight right is so dangerous. Everyone keeps forgetting about his power hooks. His left hook is dropping guys. He uses it kind of like a check to keep his power. I love his step-in knees, which he throws because he doesn't care if he catches leg. Now, that might be a little different against a guy like Mokaev, but generally speaking, he throws these step-in knees, doesn't care about closing distance. And then he had such a great kicking game, great leg kicks. His teep kicks was beating up Justin Gaethje. Because of the Muay Thai style, he does stand a little tall for my liking. And he stands directly in front of his foe, which is why he has been hit, why he gets hurt. But he has this unbelievable recovery, which credit to him for his heart. He also doesn't check leg kicks, which I don't like. But he closes the distance. He's strong in the clinch. He's a good wrestler, especially when he gets inside. Good body locks. Strong. We talk about missing weight, but he's still like a long, lengthy kind of guy. He's physically strong. He gets in there. He judo throws, trips. He doesn't even need to get takedown attempts. Like he can take you down. He doesn't fight off if you take him down. He won't fight. He'll let you take him down because he's the biggest submission threat in the UFC history. He can lock in a sweep. He can hit a submission from the bottom. He's one of the best ever at getting a submission during scrambles. A really mean ground and pound. And the one thing I'm worried about is like all his fights have been kind of quick. Like other than Poirier, they haven't gone too far. So I'm a little worried about his cardio. Adding Abu Dhabi, the heat and all that, that's concerning. Now moving to Mokaev. This guy is also so well-rounded. He's a southpaw who moves really well, quick hands, does well to draw attacks with his feints. His feedback left hand has become really a thing of beauty for him. He throws a lot of kicks to all areas, and that's because he doesn't – one, he kicks really hard, too. He doesn't care if you grab his leg because he's going to win those wrestling battles. He gets inside. You're going to the ground. He's going to beat you up with dirty boxing. He's an elite wrestler. He shoots entries or body locks. Like he can get you upper body or entries. He likes to do like a upper body lock and foot sweeps. His wrestling is very similar to Khabib's, which obviously that's his guy. But it's not explosive where he gets through, drives through, a Jordan Burroughs type NCAA wrestler. It's more about shooting, trying to get to a hip, trying to get to an angle, looking just to get a single or double, one hand out, and then just start working for angle, chain wrestling together, creating a scramble. A perfect example of this is like Genta, his fight against Armen. I know it's a while ago, but it's so good seeing him just winning the inches, getting that angle, and landing impressive takedowns. Once he's on top, I mean, he's glue. He smothers you. He squeezes the life out of you. He's like a snake in that sense, where even he's not going to – when I say squeeze, I don't mean like a submission. I mean just the top pressure, the heaviness of him, hard ground and pound. You saw the way he batted Bobby Green with ground and pound. He's a submission threat. Look what he just did to Dan Hooker, ran right through Dan Hooker. Look how he out-grappled Thiago Moises on the ground. And like what I said about Oliver, where his confidence is growing, you see the same thing with Mokaev. And it's different, Mokaev. It's like a chip on his shoulder. Like he knows he's the next big thing. But it's like I don't have to say it, you're seeing it. This is amazing. As far as British, this is an amazing fight. A main event that is so good. When I first heard the rumor of this fight, and it was kind of built up for a long time, it took a while to kind of come together. I had the same thought, and that was grappling is such a big part of their games, and when it hits the ground, it's most likely Mokaev who's going to be on top. Oliveira is going to be the one that's on the bottom in the grappling exchanges. So that means Oliveira is going to have to catch a submission. He's either going to have to catch a submission off his back, or he's going to kind of have to catch him on the feet in the exchanges. And I really think that's Oliveira's best bet. I think Oliveira's best bet is landing a big shot, which is so crazy to say about the guy who has the most submission wins in UFC history. I don't like his chances with Mokaev on top of him because of, Mokaev having the superior wrestling. And then there's this thing where you see guys talk about him. You see him training with Olympic champions in wrestling. You see the way Daniel Cormier and Khabib Nurmagomedov has talked about him for years. It's not like them pumping up a teammate that's not that good. It's like they know a secret and that he is something special, and that we're all going to see it soon. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think Oliveira is going to have moments. I think Oliveira really is like, he won't have the longest run as a lightweight champion or anything like that, but it's a special run. Like I really think when I think back about it for years to come, I'm just gonna say like, wow, what a run this guy is. And I know I'm saying it like he's the champion in this, but the new champion, they'll say the champion has a name. I think it's going to be Islam Makhachev. Give me Makhachev by decision.
Awesome. You said a lot of the things I wanted to say. Even if it ends here, if the Bronx loses to Makhachev and never gets a rematch and never fights for a title again, he's already, at least as of right now, ensconced himself as one of the 5 or 6 greatest lightweights ever to do it. And on the short list, like the extremely short list, like the Mount Rushmore of most shocking career reinventions by like a high-level fighter. Because he was already a high-level fighter that just had a very obvious ceiling. And the way he broke that it's about as stunning as anybody's ever done it. Because when I think of the other reinventions that are as shocking as Oliveira's, they are remakes of personality as much as anything else. Like Chael Sonnen going from a boring journeyman wrestler to a legit title challenger and one of the biggest stars in the sport. He started talking and he leveled up his game. He dropped from 205 to 185, took some juice, and started throwing people the hell around. Jorge Masvidal went from a hardcore fan favorite to the biggest star in the sport for about 6 months by doing nothing different, and just the stars finally aligned on one of the most cursed fighters in history.
But both those guys had to have the right person on the other side. Oliveira hasn't
Yes.
needed that.
He hasn't. And no, he's a one-man story because the person on the other side is 2014 Charles Oliveira.
That's right. That's right.
He's fixed things that I would have said you can't fix. Like, you can't fix a quitter. And it stings me to say that because, you know, like, we joke a lot on this thing, and I'll make fun of things when fighters do something stupid or when fighters make a terrible mistake, especially if they make it over and over again. But it is very, very hard for me. And I still, like, never call a professional fighter afraid. That's stupid.
Yeah, of course not,
but
yeah.
I will call him a head case, and I will call him a quitter. He has something that in the Sherdog Fight Finder goes down as a TKO via esophagus injury to Max Holloway. His esophagus is fine. He quit. Holloway hit him in the chest. It hurt real bad. He sat down at the base of the cage, and he quit. Looking at that guy sitting and writhing on the ground and, like, yelling in Portuguese that his esophagus was ruptured, I would have bet you anything that that guy was never going to be a UFC champion.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because you can fix skill deficits. And I'll talk in a minute about the skill deficits he fixed. But I would have said, you can't fix heart. You can't fix a head case. You can't fix somebody with a propensity for making... I mean, you can fix self-destructive decisions outside the cage. I mean, look at Tim Means. But you can't fix somebody who repeatedly makes self-destructive decisions in the cage.
He didn't just fix it. He went the other extreme.
Yes, he went from a guy that breaks to the guy that breaks everybody.
That's right.
And, like, I was more sure then that Charles Oliveira would never be a champ than I am right now that Nikita Krylov will never be a champ. For the reasons I said, like, he'll never even get into real contention because he's going to find a way to lose about every third fight in some dumb way. Like, Charles Oliveira was that times 5 because he was even more talented and his losses were even weirder and more shocking. He's the greatest MMA grappler of all time. Full stop. He's not the greatest grappler to have done MMA, but for a guy that has basically no grappling credentials outside of MMA, because he was fighting in MMA full time at 19. He was in the UFC at age 20. He got knee barred by Jim Miller when he was 21. And it's not because Jim Miller was better. It's because Jim Miller had been in the UFC for a long time. He was older. He was stronger. And he's an overachiever while Charles the Bronx was an underachiever.
Yeah.
Like, all that's gone. As you mentioned, you know, he's won 7 fights. Well, he's run 11 fights in a row. He won 7 in a row to, like, get to a title fight. But he's won 11 fights in a row in probably the hardest division in the sport over that span. Like, other divisions have caught up, but when he started this run in, like, late 2017, early 2018, it was lightweight was king. And lightweight had been king for basically the entire time he was bouncing back and forth between 145 and 155. You don't win 11 straight fights in the UFC lightweight division without being at least a little bit lucky. But more importantly, without being able to come back from adversity. Just nobody is that good, except Khabib Nurmagomedov. And Charles Oliveira fought better fighters over the same stretch of their careers. Charles Oliveira's he's beaten better fighters in his last 10 fights than Khabib did in his last 10.
Yeah,
some of the same ones. Some of the same ones worse. I mean, that's the intangibles.
I don't know about worse. Khabib mauled everybody.
Like, well, nobody had moments against Khabib. They had moments against Oliveira, but but they're comparable.
Yeah. The point is, they should be revered like the similar way.
They should be revered a similar way, but it's hard to get past the narrative you have in your head. I mean, I picked wrong against him. I picked against him wrong in the Ferguson fight. I said Ferguson breaks people. Like Oliveira's going to snap at some point. This has been a fun run, but here's where it ends. Ferguson. Nope. Oliveira destroyed Ferguson. I said Poirier's going to hurt Oliveira really badly sometime in the first round, and that's going to be all she wrote. Like, Poirier is, you know, when he has someone hurt, he's such a shark, and Oliveira's just not going to get to recover. I was wrong. Yeah. Poirier did hurt him, and Oliveira came back and destroyed him. Chandler, I was watching that cage side. Chandler hurt him. I was like, oh man, this is over. What a fight I'm watching.
Yeah.
Oliveira came back from adversity, came back from a fight that could easily have been stopped and won. So, I mean, those are the intangibles.
Yeah.
That's what we finally have learned. Charles Oliveira changed his internal makeup as a fighter. the skills thing, it's almost the underrated part of this now because the other part is so shocking. But he's lightweight Fabricio Verdum. They presented as two of the best grapplers in the sport with serious deficiencies other places, and striking became a plus for them. And like Verdum had the same thing where he went from a head case. I mean, dude, Verdum refusing to sign a new UFC contract and choosing to fight out the last fight on his deal, showing up like 20 pounds too fat and getting clocked by Junior Dos Santos is one of the just biggest brain cramp, just shoot yourself in the foot moments in MMA history. Like it's a almost Charles de Bronx type thing to do to yourself. And he went from like a terrible striker and a one-dimensional grappler. I mean, you remember how bad, like here's this guy who was butt scooting.
Mark Hunt.
Yeah. But like, this is a guy that like had the worst fight of all time against Andrei Arlovsky. Right. It's a guy that was butt scooting against Alice Overeem. Dude, any top 10 fighter who butt scoots, like I would have been confident saying that guy will never be a UFC champ.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he's the guy that's knocking out
Mark Hunt.
Or like hurting. Yeah. So like, all the things you said about Oliveira's striking. He's always had power. And he's always been a pretty good offensive striker. Like he's always but he's a better one. He is a deadly like Muay Thai machine now. There's power in everything. It's so ridiculous in hindsight that he killed himself trying to make 145. Because even at 155, even by modern standards, he's still tall and rangy for the division. Yeah. And if he loses to Mokaev, it's gonna take us seeing something we haven't really seen. We haven't seen this version of de Bronx get out grappled. And even when he lost by submission, because he has some submission losses, it was like quick lapses in transition. Like Anthony Pettis guillotined him. But it's not like Anthony Pettis like took him down and ran a top position clinic on him for like 12 minutes and just ground him into the dirt. Anthony Pettis struck like lightning. Jim Miller like caught a knee bar in a scramble. If Mokaev beats him on the ground, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be an Islam Mokaev performance. Just all the stuff you picture, like the Dagestani handcuff, that leg ride on the fence. So I can see both of their avenues to victory. The thing I'm most interested in is if this thing goes to the championship rounds, and I expect it to. Like who's going to be the fresher fighter? Who's going to have the momentum? Mokaev has looked good in the third round, in the fourth round, the time he went. But the time he went, he had just absolutely bullied Thiago Moises. He bullied him the whole time. He was grinding him from top position the whole time. I don't think he can do that.
Never a threat in that fight at all.
No, and Moises is a very good grappler, but he's not the Bronx.
No.
If Mokaev is ahead like 3-0 after 3 rounds, but all of a sudden it's hard for him to get takedowns in the fourth, and Oliveira is the fresher guy, nobody's touching their dial. No. Because you're in for probably one of the greatest, title fights we've ever seen. Same thing if Oliveira is up 3-0 or up 2-1 or has a 10-8 round where he almost choked Mokaev out or like knocked him down with like a head kick or a knee or something as he shot him for a takedown. But de Bronx is the tired guy in the fourth round, and Mokaev gets an easy takedown to start round 4. Like that's what I'm most excited for. It's hard for me to picture a way that this fight is not great in some way. Even if it's just a steamrolling, we're going to learn a lot about somebody.
We'll go crazy for the winner. We'll go crazy over the winner.
Yes. Yeah, and like the only way we could possibly lose, and I hope I'm not speaking this into existence, is if we get some sort of controversial finish. Like if this thing ends on an eye poke or like a groin shot or a freak injury, it'll be just like blue balls, like MMA blue balls for me. Like, cancel the recap, warm up the lotion. I'm going to go take care of this. That's it. I am going to regret this, but I am taking Mokaev. I think if they're both fighting at their best, like where their styles meet up and where they clash, Oliveira is going to have a limited amount of time to score on the feet against Mokaev, and then is probably going to the ground. And while Oliveira is, again, I think he's the greatest MMA grappler ever, going for submissions from his back against a savvy guy like Mokaev is not going to be his best place. I mean, we talked about this a couple weeks ago where Nate Diaz had great 2005 jiu-jitsu because if you were, well, he wasn't a black belt because of Cesar Gracie, but if you're that good a grappler in 2005, you could just kind of move your hips and feint stuff and just wait for the guy on top to make a mistake. That's not 2022 at the championship level. And like super high level fights just don't end with subs off the back very often anymore. And if that's where Oliveira is stuck for big chunks of this fight, he is going to be losing rounds. And I think he's going to be the one getting tired quicker and taking damage. So I expect that Mokaev is going to win this fight. And it may look one-sided in the late rounds in a way it doesn't in the early rounds. But I don't think we're going to like relax or be bored for an instant. Because if Oliveira is alive, Hope is alive, because now that he's a guy that's not going to break. He's going to be looking for realistic ways to win the fight for as long as they're in there. And give me Mokaev by decision. I won't be surprised if Oliveira wins. I won't be surprised if Oliveira wins spectacularly, but I think the odds are what they are for a reason. And again, the only thing I'm rooting for is for this like fight to give us the glory that it promises, and I think it will.
Imagine Mokaev shoots in and Charles Oliveira just jumps on a guillotine, finishes him in the first minute.
That would be honestly, in some ways, that would be the second worst outcome because we wouldn't feel sure about it.
Yeah, it's a very possibility.
At least guillotine him like 18 seconds into the second round.
Okay, yeah.
So we can argue, hey, Mokaev was winning, or hey, Oliveira was winning. Yeah. I can see our timer here has been running for over 4 hours, but we can't get away without spending at least just 3, 4, 5 minutes on something. We learned about a week ago that UFC featherweight champ Alexander Volkanovski is not only going to be in Abu Dhabi, he's going to weigh in officially at the lightweight championship weight to be on hand as a backup in case either of these guys withdraws from the fight. We don't know if he'll jump in if one of them misses weight. Like if one of them misses weight bad enough to make it a non-title fight, if they pull him and Volkanovski moves in, that we don't know about. But Volkanovski has said furthermore that whether he's needed or not, he's doing this as a prelude to trying his hand at 155 as well, and he expects to be in the title picture immediately. Part of this is just the check off the box, even though he's moving up in weight, that yes, I can make 155. It's no big deal. If he steps in, what kind of chance do you give him against either of these guys, and who do you think he has a better chance of beating?
Well, in my opinion, he's the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world right now, so he's got a good chance no matter what. And he has a slight advantage because when did he find out he's going to fight whenever? Who knows? But
he announced it a week ago, but that means he's been lobbying him for a month.
Sure, but yeah, like they might have gave it to him 3 weeks ago or something.
Yeah.
He's been able to look at film on these guys. He's been able to kind of game plan a little bit, not like he would if he had a full camp, not like if he was just facing one opponent. He's kind of have to game plan both guys. Well, they can't do that. They know they're fighting. Charles Oliveira knows he's fighting Islam Makhachev and vice versa. If something happens, they have 24 hours. He's had a little bit more. So I give him a chance of that. I give him a good chance of beating Charles Oliveira. I'd be worried. The thing I think about is that Brian Ortega, where he almost got caught. He had to fight out. Brian Ortega is very opportunistic grapple like Charles Oliveira. Like that would be worried. But on the feet, Charles Oliveira gets hit a little bit too much to me. I mean, Charles Oliveira just starch him, sure. Like Charles Oliveira knee him and knock him out, sure. But I actually think I might actually take him to beat Charles Oliveira if that happens. This is no tape study, so change my pick. Like, don't hold this against me. Mokaev, the size advantage still would worry me with Mokaev. The top side grappling, the takedowns, that would still. So I'd probably still take Mokaev over Volkanovski, but I think I might take Volkanovski over Oliveira.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you on both of those. And with Mokaev, it's not just the size advantage, because Mokaev is about the same height as Oliveira, and on fight night, I would guess they weigh close to the same. But Makachev's style of fighting makes his size advantage matter more.
He uses his size. That's part of his game. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of feel it there. And even though I don't know if I'd favor him against either, but I definitely think his chances would be better against Charles Oliveira, I got to say, I like this move. And the thing is, you and I, we do matchmaking after every UFC event, including obviously every title fight. And normally, you know, I'm against immediate title rematches unless something was controversial, and I'm against champions moving out of their division unless they've really, really cleaned it out. Alex Volkanovski just went 3-0 against Max Holloway for a reason. Like he's about to do the second lap around this division while the next round of new contenders moves up. He's like 33, 34 now. I think now's the perfect time for this. It's one of these rare times where I'm like, yes, I want that champ to move to another division and see what he can do, because it'll give his division, you know, like it'll give 10 or 15 other featherweights a chance to get another fight in and let the cream rise to the top a little bit. And because I want to see him against everybody in the lightweight top 10. Like, they all sound interesting to me, and I think he has a decent chance, like some kind of chance against just about all of them. So yeah, interesting development, and yeah, I'm sure here for it. Any last thoughts on that?
No, it's great. Just remind everybody, this is a early card. I think the main card says at 2:00 Eastern time.
Yeah, main card starts something like 2:00 Eastern time. I think I got to be up at like 10 in the morning because I'm Central Time for the undercard, something like that, or like 9
in the morning. Yeah.
Like, I usually go to bed at about 8 a.m. So I'm probably just going to stay up for.
Great. So the recap.
The recap. I'm gonna be. I don't wear pajamas, but I'll like put like a pajamas and like bathrobe on for it for sure. Like, this has been the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 280, Oliveira versus Mokaev. I've been your host, Ben Duffy. He has been Keith Schillen. If this is your first time watching or listening to one of these previews, first of all, thank you. Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed it. This is going to go down as by far our longest preview show, and that's just because there's so much to talk about. But we do think we bring the most in-depth analysis of any preview in the game. And please do like and subscribe. Leave us a comment in the comment section. Keith and I are both good about responding to those. We'd love to hear from you. If you like some of our picks, if you don't like some of them, if you thought some of the humor was off color, please do let us know. I take that as a personal victory. But most importantly, join us for the recap. We will be live on the Sherdog YouTube page about 15 minutes after the main event wraps. So mid-afternoon to early evening on Saturday, depending on what time zone you're in. We will be breaking down all 14 of these fights in reverse order. Keith takes the captain's chair. We'll start with the main event, go all the way down to that women's bantamweight opener. We will talk about what's good, what's bad, what's surprising, what was controversial. There's always something. We'll talk about what's next for some of the winners as well as losers. That's going to be some very involved conversations, considering how packed with divisional implications this card is. But most importantly, the live chat is wide open during that time. We are taking your questions, your comments. We have a lot of just back and forth talk among our friends there, and we'd love you to join them. It's both of our favorite part of what we do here. So please do join us there. Between now and then, enjoy the rest of your week. Definitely enjoy the fights.
Hit like.
Oh yeah, hit like.